Cabinets Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cabinets. The Jason Cabinets Experience is brought to you by Cabinets HR. At Cabinets HR, we deliver HR to companies with 49 or fewer people with our HR platform and by giving you access to a dedicated HR business partner. Right now, we're doing beta tests for our platform, and we're looking for people to help us with the beta test. So if you're interested in helping out, reach out to me at jasoncabinets@cabinetshr.com. Our guest today is Kevin Miller. Kevin, are you ready to be great today?
Yes, sir.
Kevin is from a small town called Killeen, Texas, by the military base Fort Hood, and he lived there most of his life. He found an interest in art and programming through the desire to make video games were his first true hobby. Later, he focused more on art throughout high school after he dabbled in programming because he felt it was too difficult. This was back when he had no C and C++. He eventually decided to shift over to finance because of the promise of big dollars and decided to get a degree in accounting because the local university did not have a finance degree. But unfortunately, he hated accounting and didn't feel competent in it. I was working at a hotel. In the meanwhile, he taught himself to program while at the working hotel. He took off a year off work and decided to focus on programming full time. He eventually got a job after going through tons and tons of applications. So, Kevin, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
No, man, I appreciate you inviting me on here.
Yeah, so a little back. So me and Kevin actually known each other for a while. So I know those who know me, like I've been doing my Kevin's HR startup for a while. And we're talking about this during the podcast, like, the challenge of non-tech founder doing a tech startup. But Kevin, like one of the first people I reached out to trying to figure out what was going on, so we had a good back and forth. We had a good history with each other. So Kevin, first, I'm a military veteran. I retired from the Army after 25 years. You're actually what's called a military brat. Can you find what that term even means so people don't know?
I mean, it's pretty much your parents are in the military and, you've been around the military culture your whole life. So, my dad, he was in Korea. I was actually born in Korea. He was stationed in Korea, lived there for 2 years. Then he moved to Fort Polk when I was around 2, lived there for about 6 years. So Fort Polk is in Louisiana. And then after that, moved to Fort Hood. And, I've been in the Fort Hood, killeen area the majority of my life, probably like 25, 26 years. And, I ended up in the DFW area after I started taking programming seriously.
It's crazy how like people always have something in common. Like, of course, I'm sure you don't remember anything about Korea, but me and my family were there for 3 years, from 05 to 08, right? So there's always some common people have in common. You just got to look for it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But like the thing about living in those military towns is it's kind of difficult to find a job there unless you know somebody. Like the surrounding towns, usually they don't really have good jobs. You got to get on base. And to get a good job on base, you have to have an in. And I could have never really find that in. So, for the majority of my life, until I was like 29, I was working, these small, low paying jobs, making like, my first job was McDonald's, I think. I was making around $7 an hour. Then I went to Subways making like $5 an hour. Once I got that hotel job, I started at around $10 an hour. And, like 5 or 6 years later, I was making 11. So, I just kind of like wasted a lot of my early life just stuck in that small town, not really making progress. But, once I left Killeen and went to DFW, man, things just took off from there.
Yeah, I think for me, the best example, I guess the worst example of that. So we were stationed in Virginia for 2 years. So This is how bad it was for like people getting jobs on post or whatever. All the baggers in the commissary were military wives, military spouses, and all of them had master's degrees.
Right.
Wow. What's going on here, right? Because had those visas, all kind of stuff. All the jobs they get was like baggers, right? And that master's degree. That just blew me away. That's just ridiculous, right?
Yeah, man, it's hard to get put on unless like you just really know the right person.
Like, and people don't realize the struggle, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I was like literally 29, living at home with my parents because I couldn't find no decent paying job.
I mean, all the time, like people like spouses, depends, try to find a job. Well, how come there's nothing, there's no job for 5 years, or you work this, quote unquote bullshit job, they don't understand. Like, first of all, if you're like dependent on military spouses or someone in the military, they know you're going to leave in 2 years, right? So instead of them thinking, let me bring on this great talent to make my company better for 2 years, they were like, okay, we're not gonna mess with it, right? I never understood that mentality of people.
Yeah, man. What's so crazy about the whole job situation, man, is if you're not careful, like you can just get kind of trapped in mediocrity.
Yep.
Like, if I just kept staying at that hotel job, it would be on my resume longer and longer, and people wouldn't have taken a chance on me. So I have to do something to get out.
So we're going to talk about TikTok later, but there's a guy following there. He's like a junior college professor from some little college in Texas. And he put on something that's like pretty good, talking about, he said, at least one semester this happens in the class, right? Still sort of really good, like making a good grade, like kicking, killing it, doing good. And then he'll like miss a couple of classes. What's going on, student? I had to take a job, pay bills, whatever. And then, and before you know it, that kid's dropped out. And, and he said, like, every semester, one kid drops out, and the fast food industry has a lower employee the rest of like next 10, 15 years. But what does the award missed out on, right? What could this kid done with his life? Now he's a loyal employee at McDonald's or Wendy's or some restaurant, He said it happens once every semester with him.
Exactly. And, the crazy thing was I actually had my bachelor's in accounting, and I was still at the hotel. So, reiterated that I needed to do something different when I was at a hotel party that they held for the employees. I was talking to like one of the maintenance guys, and he was like, "You got your degree in accounting? What are you doing here?" And the manager kind of looked at him and was like, "Shh," like,
yeah, you kind of open your eyes up, right?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to do something better, but like with accounting, I never really liked it that much. But you hear the promise, oh, it makes so much money and this and that. So I realized that I would never be a good accountant. So, and plus, like the job prospects for accounting in that small town were like pretty much zero. So I had to kind of re-engineer my thinking and try something that I actually wanted to do. And, I heard about coding and just started experimenting with it. And, about a year later, I ended up getting my first job in coding, and it's just blew up since then.
So back to military brat. From your point of view, was being a military brat like advantage or disadvantage for you later on in life? Because people don't know military brat, the military parents, they move their parents every 2 years, like, and like I'll sidetrack a little bit. Like a lot of people, like they say they don't realize the sacrifice people in the military, right? They, of course, like diplomas, sort of stuff. But like what I'm talking about, like no one in my family seen my kids graduate from high school. No one in my family seen like my kids play sports. They say me. Me and my wife didn't see any other niece and nephew, and you missed it on that, right? And of course, like you have to make new friends every 2 years, So you can talk about the challenges, or was that advantage, disadvantage from your point of view?
I mean, I guess it was, it has its ups and downs. Luckily, once we got to Killeen, we pretty much stayed there for like the next, just my parents are still there today. So I've been there for over 20 years. So I have like a long-term group of friends. But, if your parents are active in the military, they start bouncing around. So, it could be hard to kind of form long-term connections if you're always moving around. I guess the good thing is like, the schools are maybe better than the average public school. But, the high school I went to was like Ellison High School. It didn't necessarily have the best reputation, but, I still made it through. So, I guess overall the military experience, it was a good one because like most of the friends I have today, they're still from that area. So
yeah, I know I stayed for 4 years way back in the day. And even back then, cleaning, I have a good reputation, right? It's like people, like Temple, Belton, Austin, of course, Georgetown, like Killeen, they're like, Killeen was a different beast back then.
Yeah. I kind of grew up in the 90s, and that's when all the gangs and all of that stuff, all that kind of stuff was going on. So thank God I never really got caught up in it, but you couldn't really go to the mall or the fairs because people all be fighting and things of that nature. So, well, yeah, I'm just glad I never got caught up with that.
So, Kevin, next, talk about your interest in art.
I was like video games. I like just like how the characters look. So it's something that I just tried developing on my own. And I started taking, classes in school. It's kind of like what I wanted to do. But
so you say, are you talking about a graphic design or game design, stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, more like sketching, like actually drawing. and
Okay.
painting and that stuff. But I thank God my parents never let me go to art school because a lot of people come out of art school with like 200K in debt and they can't find a job.
Yeah, it's
So
the reason they call it starving artist, right?
yeah, exactly.
You know how to draw,
So
but you have no idea how to run a business.
yep, yep. And they don't the art business in general doesn't really pay you well. So kind of dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah. So talk about how video games were your first true hobby.
I mean, ever since I was like 3 years old, my
Any
parents bought
particular
me
video? Was it like you were cooked on Madden or like games like Fortnite and like Sims, or what was your go-to back in the day?
Oh, okay. So like, I started playing when I was 3, and I'm 37 now. So I spent back when the original NES was out. So I got started on like the original Mario.
Do you still have the original games?
Yeah, yeah. I still have all of my games. I never
Oh
like. I think
man,
I. Yeah.
how much is that stuff worth?
Oh yeah. It's, if you actually look at the prices, man, these video games are selling like crazy now. Like you know, Super Nintendo game, you might be able to sell it for 100, 200 bucks a piece, depending on the title. So I'm sure it's worth a pretty good fortune now.
So your wife ain't made you get rid of them? Like, what do you do with all this kid stuff? Get rid of this, Kevin. You take them my space.
Oh yeah, and I ain't nobody's gonna tell me to get rid of the video game. Yeah. What about you? Did you ever get into video games?
I
Or?
did. I used to play Madden a lot, back in the day, Of course, the
Okay.
stuff. Yeah, I never like got hooked on them like a lot of my friends did, Like, I can't remember the names of the games they used to play back in the day.
Man, it can be addicting though, like those MMORPGs. Once people get on them, they'll just play them nonstop for like 10, 12 hours. So
Yeah, definitely
you
addictive, right? And of course,
yeah,
what the joke is, like back in the day, your parents would tell you, get out your video game, go play. And I was like, you better get back and play the video game. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars or playing like esports
yeah.
or whatever the case would be, right? Like,
Yeah, I would have never imagined you like kids are literally making millions of dollars playing video games, like streaming it on Twitch. Like,
and who would have
who would have
thought
thought
that
that?
people would pay to watch someone play a game? Like, okay,
Yeah,
this is ridiculous. But when you think about, like, if you were playing Madden, like all your friends back at your house, might be 8 of you. Only 2 could play at a game at a time, or you do something Madden tournament like in person. Only 2 could play at a time, so other 6 are obviously watching you, right? So I guess it's not that far fetched, just yeah.
yeah. We're kind of in a unique time to where like if you can get a big audience, you can pretty much do anything and profit off of it. So
Yeah, it's all about branding and have a presence out there. Put yourself out there some kind of way, right? You can't be scared, as they say.
yeah, exactly. That's pretty much why I started like my own podcast and started doing videos. Like it hasn't really blown up yet, but it can't blow up if you don't put anything out there.
Yeah, but you don't. How long you only doing? Like 6 months, right? You've been doing a kind of short amount of time.
Yeah, yeah. Like on LinkedIn, I've only been posting for like maybe a couple of months. But
Yeah,
on
and it seems like you're getting a lot of good engagement on LinkedIn. A lot of people making comments and going back and forth, and some pretty big name people too.
Yeah, I've actually been doing way better on LinkedIn than any other platform. Like YouTube, my videos get like 5 views or something like that, something ridiculous. But like on LinkedIn, I actually had a good month where from like December 1 to the midpoint of January this month, I got like 1.5 million views of like
Nice.
total. So I actually got some sort of traction on LinkedIn. So yeah, I think I'm gonna focus on that platform.
So, what made you decide to start posting on social media? What clicked in your mind to say, I need to start doing this?
So man, that's just something I've been doing for like the longest, like Facebook, just kind of posting my thoughts and like posting on message boards. That's just something I enjoy doing. So I kind of
So
like,
what do you get out of? What do you get out of it?
I kind of like helping people. You know what I mean? Like, if I just think about how to improve myself and just sharing that advice with others. And at a certain point, I was like looking at, like YouTube and all this other stuff. It's like people are literally making millions of dollars just opening packages. Like, why don't I at least make an effort to get myself out there more? Like, who knows where it could lead? And
So, how do you deal with, I guess, the called trolls or haters, like when people like put negative stuff on there or say like, Kevin, you're wrong, or Kevin, this sucks, or Kevin, this, or how do you deal with the negativity that's out there?
Man, interestingly enough, man, I haven't really had that much negativity, and I'm guessing it's because, like, LinkedIn is more professional. People not just gonna go off on the deep end like they would on Twitter or YouTube, where they have anonymity. Like if they got to post a real picture and there's job repercussions, they kind of cull their comments a little more. So, but like on other platforms, you just got to kind of ignore it. Like, you don't know this guy, so why does his opinion matter? You know what I mean? You just ignore it and keep going. Like even me getting into programming, I'm sure a lot of people didn't think I could do it. Like, no, he'll probably be stuck in killeen forever. He'll probably be stuck in the hotel industry forever. So just like, whatever, I'm gonna ignore it. I'm gonna just keep doing it. Like, it's something I enjoy. So like their opinion, like people that hate, their opinion holds like little relevancy.
Yeah, I remember reading some of the people like who that you originally know, like back in high school, whatever. Their opinion of you is never going to change. Like you could be like, you could become like the next Elon Musk, and whatever the case may be. You're going to invent a new programming language. To them, you always be the same Kevin Miller who's never do anything with life, because they never did anything with their life, and they can't admit to themselves that someone did something better than them.
Yeah, like interestingly, like in the Bible it says, Jesus says like a prophet is never accepted in his own hometown, and that's true. Like,
it is.
The people that know you, they don't respond to you. Like on Facebook, I was posting this stuff, no responses. Take it to LinkedIn, way more response. So sometimes you just got to get in the right crowd.
That's very true, very true. So Kevin, talk about how you started working in the hotel.
Actually, like, so I was taking these accounting classes, and one of my friends in the accounting class, he actually put me on. Like, I was trying hard to find a job. I couldn't find anything, man. But he approached me one day. He said, at the hotel, they're looking for somebody, man. You want this job? I said, yeah. And, he just pretty much introduced me, and I ended up getting that job. So
now, was it like accounting bookkeeping job? Was it like a front desk job? What was it?
Oh, well, it was actually like a night audit job, where you stay overnight and you kind of watch the front desk, and, you probably do paperwork. That's the kind of job that was.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin, your video went out.
Okay, let me. Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, you're back on now.
Okay.
So basically, not the type of job you wanted for yourself going through college, right? Like.
Well, like for a college job, it was good because it's like it gave me a ton of free time. Like my hours were 11 at night to 7 in the morning. So, everybody's pretty much sleeping when I'm working at the front desk. So it gave me a lot of time to just, do stuff like programming or look up whatever. But it was kind of a dangerous job too. Like,
yeah, you're telling me about that wasn't like the best job to have, right?
Oh yeah, man. Because I was the only employee in the hotel. Like, there's no security, there's nothing. It's just me.
And was this in Killeen or up in Dallas-Fort Worth?
Killeen. So I was still in Killeen at that time. Yeah, so
that's all you had to say. Night hotel job in Killeen. Yeah, you probably need to have hazard duty job pay or like a weapon or something.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to start taking one up there, man. But thank God, like a little while later, I just got into programming because, the job was stressing me out.
So wait, you talked about this a little bit before, but what made that you to click? Like, I'm at a hotel, I'm making decent money, I guess. I'm still living with my parents. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I do something better. What clicked it towards programming? Why not something else? Why programming?
Like programming, that was always something I wanted to do. And, I was this was the time when the industry wasn't super saturated. Like now it's almost impossible to get in. Like that was during the time where there was like, oh yeah, we need programmers, we need warm bodies. So, if you can showcase your skills, we have a position for you. So, like I was doing a lot of Excel work, and I was like, let me just try this out. Like, let me automate some of these tasks. So, I was playing around with VBA, and it kind of made doing a lot of the tasks way quicker. So, just that little bit of success told me, okay, maybe I can do this. So, I just kept with it, kept learning for a little while. And then.
And so you're self-taught, you didn't go to college or a boot camp or nothing like that, just self-taught?
Yeah, just self-taught. Pretty much like reading books from cover to cover, going through the projects. and deploying them, and I pretty much had that same attitude today, man. I spent a fortune on programming books and courses. I probably got thousands of courses on Udemy.
So when you were applying to jobs, and eventually I'm sure they found out you were self-taught, what were most recruiters, hiring managers' reaction to you? Like, man, we're not going to hire you because you're self-taught. There's no way you can teach yourself. Or they open that you can actually do this by yourself, and I have to like spend thousands on school.
I think that during that time, they were more open to non-traditional, like you didn't have to have a computer science degree. So as long as they would give me the conversation and I could demonstrate what I was talking about, because I knew what I was talking about. Like if you deploy a project from scratch, you kind of know the ins and outs, so you're able to answer their questions. So since I was able to answer their questions and showcase my projects, and also had like a programming blog. The programming blog, that was kind of like what really caught the eye of the company that really eventually hired me that first time.
I think that's genius right there. Have a programming blog. Yeah, that's very smart on your part, I think.
Yeah, so I kind of take that same philosophy now, and I started doing the videos and the podcast, because that's kind of like what distinguishes me from somebody who's just a resume. They just have experience, like, whereas like they can see me, they can attach like a face to the post, to the resume. They say, okay, this guy's really serious about programming. So
Kevin, when you first started out, you learned how to program. Well, do you have like any mention, and when you reach out to, like, suppose you were stuck on a problem, do you have anyone you could reach out to, or you just had to figure it out yourself?
Yeah, man, I pretty much just have to figure things out myself. Just reading books from cover to cover, and like after a while, you figure out a lot of people don't really read programming books or go all the way through the courses. So if you're going through the book all the way, you're going through the course all the way, you probably end up with more knowledge than a recruiter, or not the recruiter, the interviewer. Like you just got to get in there, do it, fail, analyze, try it again. So
what coding language did you learn first, and why did you pick that language to learn?
like back in the day, before, when I first started learning programming, you remember I told you, like, I went to make video games and all of that. You had to use C or C++. Like there wasn't nearly as many resources as there are now. So that's what intimidated me and drove me away the first time. But when I came back to it, I learned JavaScript. And, the cool thing about that is, you could just do it in a browser. You don't have to download all this fancy software, all these compilers. You just type it up and just run it in the browser. So I was actually able to do that at work. And that's kind of like what it, and enabled me to get a little bit of taste of that. And also mentioned VBA. That was another thing that actually had like a direct correlation on the job and dealing with Excel spreadsheets. But during that year I took off to learn programming, I learned Ruby on Rails, and that's kind of like what I deployed my programming projects in. So Ruby on Rails and JavaScript. And, ever since I got my first job, I never touched Ruby on Rails again, but yeah.
So when did it click on you? Like you're studying, you're doing the stuff. When did it click on you that, when the light bulb goes, like, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this, and I actually can make a career out of this. I'm actually decent. I know what I'm doing. I think I could do this a career and make something of myself. When did that click? How did that click with you?
Yeah, I think, once my money started running low, because like, every month, like I had like $10,000 saved up. So when I took the year off, every month I'll give my parents like $400. So, once the money started getting low, I'm like, man, I can't just sit around doing this. Like I have to start applying. I have to, do something to generate income. So, once I was able to talk to some of these companies, and the first company that seemed really interesting to me was a company called Rackspace. It was out there in San Antonio.
Yeah, they're like something like a Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, like a cloud service company, right?
Yeah, like one of them type of companies. And I actually interviewed with them, and they were like, okay, yeah, we really like you, but the only positions we have open is for like, you have to have like a couple of years of experience. So, but just them saying like, oh yeah, you're doing good stuff, this is good code, that kind of like, gave me an idea that I was cut out for the industry.
Like, yes, this is possible.
Exactly.
So
And
next, talk about some like. So I think a lot of people, they get into coding, right, and
yeah,
they don't realize how difficult it is to keep up to date with everything, right? Because like everything changes all the time,
mm,
and most jobs. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm sort of I come like Google and Apple, like give you time to improve or whatever. But most likely, regular software remote jobs, if you say, "Hey, I'm gonna take 3 hours off, I won't get paid to do something," like, they're gonna say, "No, you're not. You're on time, right?" Talk about having like the flexibility and the prioritization skills, like keep up to date on everything.
okay. So yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of company, a lot of companies, they're probably not gonna give you time to study. So you're gonna have to spend a lot of time outside of work doing this stuff. So I can imagine it's harder for people with families, but luckily for me, I didn't have a family. I was able to just spend a bunch of time outside of work just studying and getting my skills up to par. But yeah, jumping into the industry is really not easy because a lot of people, they probably won't help you out that much, and you kind of expect to get up and go. And I think a lot of people look at new developers as competition, so they don't necessarily want to teach you to possibly eventually replace them.
Mhm.
So, luckily I had the self-taught, the self-learning motivation. Like I'm able to just teach myself stuff. And, if you're initially it's hard, but if you have that attitude and they're able to see you able to get things done on your own, pretty soon, like you can become like an authority because, okay, he knows this body of knowledge and, nobody else in this company has it. He just went out and got it himself. So, you know, if you can't find a mentor, you just gotta be able to go out there and get the knowledge yourself.
And
Use
nothing,
every
yeah, nothing like you said. Go to Udemy, go to YouTube. I mean,
yeah,
you know, find a mentor on YouTube, right? There's plenty of people out there who like teach you how to do stuff.
exactly. Like there's so much free stuff now. Like there's no excuse really. Like I think the site I used was Code Academy or something. It's like one of those interactive sites to where you can kind of like type in code and see the results, and it tells you this is correct, this isn't correct. Like there's just so much like free stuff, or you can buy a course off of Udemy for like $12, like
There's nothing.
40-hour
Yeah.
courses.
Come on, one time I was researching like Python courses on YouTube, and I found this free YouTube Python course. And there's one comment somebody put on there: "I have a 4-year degree. I learned more in these 3 hours from you than you learned in my 4 years of computer science at my university."
Exactly. That's how it is.
So next, talk about I think it's called whiteboard interview. So first, first part of the question is, what is a whiteboard interview, and what's your opinion of it? I read some places like some people say they don't like whiteboard interviews because anxiety, it's pressure.
Yeah.
Other people say, well, they rather prefer whiteboard interviews because they have a family, they have stuff going on. There's no way they have time to do an interview like a project at home, right? So what's your take on all that?
So, like a whiteboard interview is kind of like where they ask you to solve a coding problem, but instead of typing it in the computer and seeing the result, they kind of want you to whiteboard it out in pseudocode. And, me personally, I'm not really a fan of that because it doesn't really reflect what you're going to be doing on the job day to day. But I guess I can see the value in it because it's not really about the correct result. It's more so like they're seeing if you can think on your feet and your thinking process, how you react under pressure. I don't particularly care for it, but I can see why some companies do it. I would prefer to, like, if I was interviewing somebody, I'll probably do, have them do a live coding exercise. Obviously, there's going to be that same nervousness, but it's actually something that's relevant to the job. You're going to have to code on the job. So, I'm not asking you to do something that there's no correlation to the job.
So it seems nowadays, and maybe this has been going on for a while, right? You know, and this is my opinion, based being here in Seattle and other places. Like, if you're like a senior developer, it's like they change jobs when they want to. Like, they'll quit a job, have a better paying job in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Junior developers, not so much, right? It's like it's a
Yeah.
real struggle for them to find a job, right? And like you
Yeah.
said, that company was like, we need 2 year experience for an entry level job. Like, come on now, you kidding right now?
Yeah.
So that's a struggle. It's far harder from their job. And I think a lot of coding academies set for fair, right? Because coding academies, they charge a lot of money, and they say once you finish, you get $100,000 your job somewhere. Like,
Oh, that's a lot.
is it true? Maybe not, right? And I know a lot of coding academies here in the Seattle area, they'll say graduate from this boot camp and be a full stack engineer. Like that's BS, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I know senior developers who say they would never ever claim they're a full stack developer, right? Never, right? And so I think a lot of them get a bad advice. A lot of it too is like them being really illiterate too. Like a lot of them think I'll graduate and I have a job the next day, right? Can you talk about some of the struggles that junior developers have right now, or have been having, and probably have in the future finding their first job?
Man, that's pretty much why I made those set of posts that just eventually went viral about the interviewing process. So I was talking to a bunch of junior developers, and they're talking about like, I had to put 500 applications in. I'm going through 7 rounds of interviews, and they're asking me to do all these leak code problems and weird stuff like, oh yeah, we want you to rotate a matrix. It's like, this is a junior JavaScript developer job. Like, what are you trying to test for? You know what I mean?
So I'll push that back on a little bit, right? So I know according to stats, any job you're going to have an average of 250 applications, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then, do you think they're getting these like harder tests to not prove they can do the job, but prove they can think at a different aspect? Like there's a different way of thinking, and they want to see how you can think when you're challenged. What will you do if you're not given the right resources?
Well, like the thing is okay. Say I'm testing for a front end, React position. I want them to come in and be able to do some React code. But like how the interview process is now is like, okay, we're going to ask you some random leak code questions. So a problem I've been hearing from developers is they say, I don't actually have time to build websites because I have to grind on leak code all day. So they might be able to answer, the interview question, but they're not actually equipped to do the job because they don't have time to actually do React or, Angular or whatever. So, I guess like it could be an interesting thinking exercise, but I'd much rather have somebody that's like, okay, I have the skills to come in and I understand the framework. I can kind of like dive into the code, but I can understand why other companies want, people that are, supposedly data structures and algorithms masters. But how I feel is like there's a limited set of time. You can only be so good at something because you don't have infinite time. So do I want them to be grinding on theoretical problems all day, or do I want them to start off with something more practical? Like, the purpose of data structures and algorithms is pretty much to be able to do things efficiently. But if they don't even know how to build something in the first place, how can they be efficient? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I definitely think 7 interviews is too much, right? Like I know a lot of people say, for hiring and firing, like, hire slow, fire fast. My perspective is like, no one ever fires fast, right? No one, usually you fire someone, everyone knows they should have been gone, right? Because like it's like, well, it's Christmas, it's the anniversary, it's whatever, right? And for they're still there. And I'm not saying like, hire someone the first day you see them, but like 7 interviews, I don't know about that. That seems excessive, right? Like, and I don't care how many interviews you do or what do you do. You never know if someone's going to work out with you until they work with you, right? And already with hiring. Of course, you got to know, and most states are at will, right? I mean, you can bring on someone for 2 months, it doesn't work out, let them go. As long as you don't go for like, one of the Title 17. You can't do it like race, color, religion. But there's nothing wrong. In most states, they'll say, hey, Jason, we'd hired you. It's not working out. Here's pay, right? But like 7 interviews, that just seems excessive, right?
Yeah, it seems expensive.
Yeah, and of course that works for Amazon. Amazon model. You put an application in. You want to get an email like another 6 months usually, right? And like it can hire 2 years, but Amazon's Amazon, right?
Right, exactly. They got the funds, and I'm sure they got people that's just dedicated to just interviewing. That's all they do. But other companies, they got to pull senior developers off projects, so he's not contributing to the code base. He's just going round after round with these juniors. It's like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah. So you think another reason why there's so many interviews, because whether it's true or not, I think a lot of developers have like this stereotypical, introverted, work by themselves, not really team players, don't really like to collaborate. And is the intent of having these other interviews to see the real person, right? Is this person really going to be collaborative, really going to work well with us?
I think most of it's coming from them trying to copy the big boys like Google, Amazon, Facebook. Like, oh, it works for them, so maybe it'll work for us. But I don't think so because the circumstances are completely different.
Yeah, because Google can afford to have like 100 coding jobs empty for the 6 months. If you're a mid-sized company or startup with 20 people, can you really afford to have even one developer position empty?
Exactly.
If you do, your startup, you have one developer position empty, you're not building a product, you don't have your product, can't get your MVP, can't get product market fit, can't get customers, can't invest. It's a whole cycle, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't really see what they're doing with 5 to 7 rounds of interviews. Like, what are they asking? Like, why can't you determine that in 3 interviews?
And
That's what
happens all the time. They'll do the 7 interviews. Okay, we're going to offer so-and-so a job. They took another job. I thought they wanted to work
yeah,
with us. Well, they did, but the 7 interviews, that's just too much. And they got to offer even less money than here. And they, they're done,
yeah, yeah. These guys, so especially if they're good, they're interviewing with multiple companies. They're getting multiple offers. So you got to hurry up and get them before they're off to the other company. Like, most when you interview, you never really interview with just one company, just for the fact that you want to have leverage during the interview. That's how it's almost like buying a car. Like, you don't just pull up to the
Yeah.
first car lot. Oh, here's the first. Oh, okay. You just drive off with the car. You go to multiple car lot sales. Such and such offered me a car for 35,000. Can you do better than that? Like,
Yeah. And I always advise people, even if you have the best job ever in the world, you should always go actually look for a job every 6 months. Like,
yeah,
maybe not make it public, but apply for a job, put your application out there, resume, like every 6 months to see what kind of hits you get, right? I mean, you never know.
yeah,
And it's like a proven fact now, like if you stay with the same company like 3, 4, 5 years, you'll lose up to 20 to 30% earning potential, right? Like you have
yeah,
to get a new job every 2 years, right? It's the way of the world, And like people say, oh, you're not loyal. Well, like a few years ago, all these companies laid everyone off and,
yeah.
and pretty much cheat them out their 401ks, So
Mhm.
what's the saying? That it was good for the gander is good for the goose,
Yeah, loyalty 2 ways. I kind of learned about loyalty, my first job. I was planning on staying there for a while, but after a year, he's like, okay, we got to let you go. Then, I had just signed a new lease. So it's kind of like,
Like, can you give me some kind of warning? Like, hey, maybe a month before, hey, things ain't going too good.
yeah,
You might have to let you go a month, and then you would probably wouldn't sign that lease.
exactly. So, just let you go, and now you're left to scramble. So it's kind of like, these companies, they'll be fine without you. Like, you
Oh yeah.
think that they're not just going to completely crumble. They'll just bring in somebody else. So,
Like if you work at a company and you die today, trust me, within at the most 2 weeks there'll be a job out there,
yeah,
recruiting for you.
exactly. So I think it's like you got to be respectful. Like, okay, you hired me, I'm gonna give you a year or two of work, but after that, then okay, I'm open to leaving. Like, you don't just want to come in. They bring you on 1 month later, you're gone, because it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
I think a year is a good thing. A year, yeah, I think a year is a good thing. And someone put this somewhere, like when a business lays people off, it's good for the business. It's a good business decision. But when
yeah,
an employee quits, they'll bring this lower, right? It can't be both ways, I don't think.
yeah, exactly. Like, for my current job, they just didn't renew the contract, so all these UI UX guys, they just got laid off. And this is right before Christmas. So you never know when the cut could be coming. So as much as you want to be like good and loyal, you just sticking at the same company, you're going to be underpaid, and the loyalty is not necessarily reciprocated. You're going to be there for 3 or 4 years, and they'd be like, you to save some money, your job's gone.
Yeah, especially nowadays, with all the opportunities out there for people, like you said, make YouTube videos, do side
Yeah,
gigs, remote work. It's just, it's so many ways to make money nowadays, not to be tied down to one company and risk everything with that one company.
yeah, man. This is a bad idea to put all your eggs in one basket. That's kind of like why I've been working on just increasing my visibility. Because, man, like before I started doing the videos, I never really had like a big company hit me up. But ever since I started posting a lot on LinkedIn and doing the videos, I had recruited, like, people from Oracle, Microsoft, Facebook,
You get known,
Amazon.
definitely. You get known, you get a name, you get a brand name, I mean, you have a brand now, Kevin. I mean, most people don't have, I mean,
Exactly.
everyone has a brand. It might be a shitty brand or a no-name brand, but everyone needs a brand, right? Because
Exactly.
and like with you, like, suppose you decide to quit your job and start looking for another job, and someone else quit their job, the other person had like nothing, like to me. Like, I'm pretty sure if you Google Kevin Miller, stuff's gonna come up.
Yeah.
Google some other random person like John, Jason, Michael, whatever, nothing comes up
Yeah.
because people say they don't like LinkedIn stalk you or do Google searches on you looking for a job? They do.
Yeah,
They
they
do.
do.
First of all, they want to make sure you're not doing nothing crazy that's gonna hurt the company,
Yeah.
right? They want to say what we have out there, right? So like, yeah, and people don't get it. It's not that hard to do either, I don't think.
And you remember that one post that I had made, and you commented on it, and you know, the reply from someone was kind of like, why should I have to do this? But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do.
I mean, it's the game, right? I mean, you have to play the game, unfortunately, right? I
Yeah, like,
mean,
you know,
you're the best whatever in the world, and no one knows about it, right? It's like you got to
yeah,
draw the greatest pain in the world. You don't tell people about it, no one's gonna see it, right?
exactly.
And
You
maybe
know,
that's what
like
you want, but I don't know.
it's, you know what I'm saying? Like real life is in like school where, okay, you turn in an excellent project, the teacher gives you praise and the sticker, like you have to advertise yourself. Like, you know, you're standing next to 5 other people. Why are they gonna pick you? You know, so marketing, getting yourself out there, you know, that's just as important as your technical skills.
Yeah, you have to be a whole package nowadays, right? You can't be a one-trick pony, so to speak, I guess is what the thing
Yeah.
is now.
Yeah.
And
So
thing with branding yourself, I would say it's unnatural. Even to me, I still like I'm uncomfortable like putting the camera doing videos, right? But
yeah.
you get used to it. It's like a muscle memory, right? Eventually you get used to it. But the thing with it, like you have to do it all the time. Like I remember one time I was doing it for a while, and whatever I stopped for 2 weeks, right? Something came up, I was 2 weeks, and then when I tried to do it after the 14 days, it was so hard. Like you're doing this hundreds of times, right? But after 2 weeks, I just like, oh man, this sucks. Like, what am I doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, me personally, man, I'm not like a talkative guy. I'm kind of like a almost antisocial. I stay to myself. Like, so for me to actually be on video, that's an amazing thing. Like, I have to kind of like force myself to get on video. But once you start, like you say, it gets easier and easier, and it opens up a lot of doors. That's the main thing.
So next, let's talk about this. So there's a lot of people out there who have no experience in tech. They're starting to start a
Mhm.
company, and the biggest challenge is trying to find a tech person, right? And I think the
Yeah.
challenge is like, so first of all, it's like, do you want to do an intern? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but
Mhm.
they really know what they need to do. There's stuff like Fiverr, Upwork, right? But on Fiverr, Upwork, you might someone charge $100 an hour. Like, man, $100 an hour, can I really afford that? Are they gonna rip me off? Or
Yeah.
someone's just starting out. Right, I can afford it, but do they really know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
It's so hard for a non-tech person to find the right tech team, right? Can you talk about your advice for those people?
Um, well, I would say what they should do maybe is like reach out to a senior tech guy and pay him and say, hey, we want you to interview guys for our company or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
because if you're not experienced with tech, you're not going to really be able to assess these guys' skills. They can tell you anything.
Yeah,
Like,
I think so many tech people, you tell them, hey, I want you to build this for me. Can you do it? And they'll say yes, even though
yeah,
they know they can't, right? They just want to say
yeah,
yes. Either one, because they have the ego. Oh, I can build anything. I just learned this. It's a new code. If I know PHP, I
mhm,
can learn, Python, no problem.
yeah,
Or they're like being, dishonest,
exactly.
or they say, I can build this in 100 hours. But then, not telling you the 100 hours, 20 of them to learning what they got to do, right? And other stuff
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah, you don't want to pay them to be learning. Like you're paying them to build something. And like you say, with the dishonesty thing, sometimes you think you're getting some kind of custom solution. They're just building a site on like Wix or Webflow and say, oh, here you go,
Yeah, I know, right? T-
WordPress template.
yeah. So I think that's great advice to have to find some kind of senior tech person. But, a lot of people have ideas, but they have no any tech people, right? What are the best ways to meet a tech person? Because those are like meetups and Eventbrites. Of course, I'm in the Seattle area.
Mhm.
You're in Dallas. It's pretty easy to find tech people there, I would think. How
Yeah.
about people like places like, I don't know, like Killeen, Texas, or, Wichita Falls, Texas, or Lubbock, Texas, or a town like maybe not a college. Well, Lubbock's not a good example. Have Texas Tech, but a town with no tech people there. What's your advice for them to try to find people?
Yeah, they just need to leverage the power of like the internet, especially LinkedIn. Like Colleen not going to find very many tech people. So, you're wasting your time in these small cities pretty much. So, get on LinkedIn, reach out to, different tech people, have conversations. I've actually had like, like business owners reach out to me and ask me for advice, just what I'm saying? You don't necessarily even have to pay them initially. Just say, hey man, I noticed that you seem to have expertise. Do you mind if I get a little bit of your time and ask you a couple of questions? And then they say, okay, yeah, sure. Then you say, okay, I'm trying to start a new business. I'm trying to hire some juniors. What do you recommend I do? And if you find one that you really like his advice, and you can ask him, hey, you mind if I take a few hours of your time, and I'll pay you for it. Can you, take a look at these juniors for me and tell me what you think about this guy? And they showcase the portfolio and all of that. And one thing a senior will be able to do is he'll be able to like look at the code. He'll be able to see like, okay, like something I like to do is, somebody shows me their portfolio site. I'll look inside the source code. I inspect it, and if I see something like WP Dash, I know they're using WordPress. Or you can look in the source code and see Wix.com. So that tells you that they didn't really make that site from scratch. But somebody that's not really tech savvy, they might not be able to pick up on that. So that's why I say it's important to get somebody that kind of knows what they're doing.
That's great advice. So talk about this next. So I think there's definitely a disconnect in how developers talk and how like non-developers talk, right?
Mm.
Example I use all the time. Like if I say, hey, Bob, open the door for me. Bob's going to get up, open the door.
Mm.
For a developer, I can say, hey, Bob, the get up at a 90-degree angle, press your chair at a 60-degree angle, use 60% of thrust to go towards the door.
Yeah.
No example, but like, most people, you tell them, do things 1 to 10. Developer, you got to do like, not even one, you got to do 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D.
Yeah.
And is it the responsibility of the developer to tell the non-tech person, hey, this is how you need to talk to me? Or something the non-tech person needs to know? Like, how do you get to the divide or the disconnect? Like, they're talking different ways, right?
I think it's pretty much up to both of them to say, let's meet on the even ground. This is what I need from you. And the other guy said, okay, this is what I need. Because I think like with development, you have to be very careful. If somebody says, I want this feature, the developer said, well, what exactly do you need? Like, how do you need it? Because
but how many developers actually say that? How many developers are actually like, okay, you need this feature, I'll build it for you, and they don't, and the developers ask the D2 questions they need to get the job done. They just, okay, he wants this, I'll make it for him.
Yeah, because I think if you're purchasing a product, is ultimately you purchase a developer's time. I guess it will be ultimately be up to you to get exactly what you want. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Obviously you can hit him with a bad review if he gives you something pretty bad. But if you're spending your money, I guess ultimately it'd be like, this is exactly what I want. He should communicate with you and say, hey, this isn't possible. This is possible, or I need more clarity here. Because the last thing you want as a developer is to spend like 10 hours developing a feature, and then he brings it to you, and you're like, what is this? Like, why isn't it how I'm picturing it in my mind? You know what I mean? Like what he's picturing when you ask for a feature and what you may want may be two completely different things. So, if a developer is asking you for specifics, that's a good thing. So he can deliver exactly what you want. And, obviously I'll probably be more skeptical of the guy that doesn't ask for specifics. He said, oh yeah, I can build that, because you probably gonna get something you don't want.
Yeah, definitely. So, tell me your opinion about this, and this is my personal opinion. It's like, from my experience, a lot of developers, they love to build stuff. They're always building stuff in other projects. Yeah, but they're very completed project, right? Can you talk about that some, or am I just I'm not seeing that right?
Yeah, like me personally, I really complete projects because it's like a lot of exploratory learning. Like, you just build projects just to learn a new technology. You know what I mean? You don't want to just be stuck on the same project for years at a time, unless you just have an idea. Like a lot of developers, they're not really idea people. Like they're not like, okay, I want to build the next best calendar application, the next best fitness application. They're kind of like, I want to see how to build this in Python. I want to see how to build this in C#. So, they'll halfway complete a project. Okay, I think I know C# pretty well. And then, they'll move on to the next interesting technology. So I think it's just the fact that the particular project they're working on, that's not like an idea that they absolutely want to see the completion and market. It's just kind of like the means to an end. Like, I'm using this to learn this project, and now I'm bored. Let me move on to something else.
So Kevin, let's suppose that you start your own tech company, your own startup. What would be your process to bringing on, hiring, recruiting software developers?
Okay, so like when it comes to that, I think it's important to on like the work that they're doing, like the level of work. Like I constantly see like the requirements ramping up higher and higher and higher and higher for juniors. Um, you're not really gonna like me as a small company, I wouldn't be able to go through 10 rounds of interviews with these guys. And they pass all 10 rounds. I'm not gonna be able to hire that junior. Google will probably hire him for like, more than most seniors are making. So you have to be realistic for one. Okay, does this guy, is he eager to learn? Is he easy to work with? Has he actually deployed projects? So, does he know the tech stack? Just basically can he come in and contribute with the oversight of a senior? Where you're going to spend most of your time really analyzing who you're bringing on is your seniors, because they're the ones that's going to be overlooking all the projects, the team leads and all of that. So if I'm going to ask all the hard questions, it's going to be to them. And, with those guys, you also, beyond the technical part, you have to see their ability to communicate. Like if they're going to be over your juniors, how do they make juniors feel? Because, I know one guy, he left the tech industry because his experience was so bad at his first company. You know what I mean? So like as a senior, if a junior asks you a question, how does this guy respond? Does he say, no, just go look it up. I don't have time for that. Go figure it out. Or does he say, okay, this is what you have to do. Let me give you an understanding of this. You have to have a senior that's willing to teach.
Yeah, don't be wrong. I think there's a time every time to say, "Hey, go figure yourself." But
Yeah,
not every single time though. Not every single
exactly.
time.
Like the goal as a senior is to get the juniors to a space where they're autonomous. Like the better you teach them, the more autonomous they'll eventually be. So it's kind of annoying at first when they ask you question after question after question. But if you give them a good answer, they're not going to ask you that question again because they know what they're doing. I think like where you start saying, hey man, you need to figure this out, is when they ask you the same question over and over. That's like they're not listening. But if it's like a new question, it's like, okay, yeah, let me tell you, because if you're the senior, you're ultimately responsible for the project. That's your ability to put a stamp on them and get them in alignment with the goals of the project.
Yeah, you talked about this some earlier. I think a lot of people like they don't want to teach their subordinates or junior developers or junior whatever because, like you say,
Yeah.
they're going to take my job. My point of view is like you should want them to take your job because that means you train them up right, and they should be taking your job just the same. You should be taking your boss's job right. But too many people have to tell it, oh, I'm not going to train them up because they're going to take my job. Well,
Yeah.
you want them to take your job because hopefully you're taking someone else's job, right? Or you're moving on
Right.
to better things. But so many people have that
Yeah.
limited mindset.
Yeah, like what people don't understand is that being able to teach and lead, that's going to put you in a completely different, like, realm of the company. You know what I mean? If I could get these 5 juniors, I could teach all of them and get them to come onto one accord to handle this project. That's going to possibly put me in a management position, like if that's what you want to do.
So from your point of view, what are some good characteristics that developers should have, and maybe some bad characteristics you noticed?
Yeah, I have to say good characteristics. You have to be eager to learn, because you can't coast on knowledge from 5 years ago in this industry. You always have to learn something new. I think another characteristic is they have to learn how to deal with frustration, because there's going to be a lot of problems they don't know how to solve. So do they, freak out and just shut down, or do they just keep trying different things over and over until they figure out the solution, or do they know how to reach out to the proper party? Like, hey, I don't really know this. Can you help me out? Like, I'll say bad characteristics is you don't really want the guy that thinks he knows everything, and you don't want the, you remember the time when they say, oh yeah, we want to bring this coding ninja, coding wizard on. Like, honestly, I don't know if you necessarily want to bring that kind of guy into the company, because, you don't want a guy that's filling the code base with like weird code.
Yeah, he's gonna build some all crazy shit. When he leaves, no one's gonna know how to do it, right?
Exactly.
Like, what is this? What's this? What's that? And then
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if nobody can understand the code base, you're gonna have to rebuild it. And that's expensive. So yeah, you got to find a guy that writes clear, simple, understandable code. That's key, because that's maintainable. Like if nobody understands it, that welcome to a rewrite of the entire code base.
So follow-up question, what is your definition of good code? Or what does that even mean?
Well, like for me personally, it does the job that it's supposed to do. It's efficient. Like when I say it does what it's supposed to do, you say, okay, I want, this to open up and display this. Like it accomplishes the feature that's asked for, and it does it efficiently. It's quick, and it's also easy to understand. Like, it's a good code base when, just you just look at the code like, oh, okay, wow, this is simple. I understand what's going on. Like, if a new developer can read your code and they're like, okay, this is good. Wow, this is simple. To me, that's good code. And, like I mentioned before, you want to avoid using weird, like edge case language mechanisms that nobody understands. You want to avoid stuffing technologies in a code base just to stuff it in. Like, oh, this is a hot new library. Let's just bring it in, just because it's new and hot. Like that creates a bunch of tech debt. You know what I mean? Because, okay, nobody really analyzed this library. You come and find out this library really isn't that good, but we stuffed it in the code base just, so there's this thing called like resume programming, where you have a developer, he recommends bringing in technologies just because it's new and he wants that on his resume. But does that actually fit the problem domain? Does it effectively solve the problem at hand? You know what I mean? So if he's just bringing in technologies and it doesn't really bring any benefit, you're just adding complexity to the code base. And he has a better resume, but your code base just became more difficult to understand, and therefore now it's more expensive.
Kevin, what do you think most people get wrong about having a tech career?
I would say the main thing is if you're just here for the money, tech is going to punish you because you constantly have to learn. Like I'm on a Saturday reading math books. Like people might ask me why, because I need to differentiate myself. Like just the amount of saturation that's coming because everybody wants to be in tech. You have to do something that makes you stand out. You have to do something that's difficult. Like they can't just read watch a course and 2 days later have your skill set. So like for me, math, that's something that scares away a lot of people. Like they don't want to dive into linear algebra, calculus, and all of that stuff. So that's not something they can just pick up immediately. They have to spend years studying that. So, if I get really good at that, my skill set is going to be highly distinctive, and at that point you can pretty much write your own checks. So, with tech, don't come in here thinking it's an easy way to 6 figures, because you got to work at it.
Yeah, I think so many people say, I'll go to this boot camp for 6 months and then, make 6 figures,
I think the mistake, what happened was at one point that was true, because, there was one point where companies, they needed a bunch of developers. So the demand for developers outweighed the supply. So, there was a point early, like, 5, 6, 7 years ago, where companies would pretty much pay you to come on and learn. But now there's so many developers, these boot camps every year, they're pumping out developers. And there's so many developers in not enough positions. So now when you're coming in, you have to be ready to go. Like there's no let me just sit back and learn, like, because they have that choice, because the supply of developers is now outweighing the demand. So, you got to be good now to get in.
So Kevin, about how many hours per week do you spend like improving yourself and your craft? Like estimate, like how many hours per week do you spend like making your better at your craft?
Oh man, I spend a lot, man. It just depends on sometimes how I'm feeling though. Like if I'm starting to get burnt out, I'll just do something else until that feeling goes away. So some days I might not study any, but other days I might just do different coding related things or get on a podcast, for hours a day. Like something I'm trying to do now, I'm trying to go through this book on 3D math. I'm just reading 10 pages a day, just to keep consistent. The book is about 800 pages long. So I should, like around, a couple more months, I should have it done, because I'm about 150 pages in now. So
Kevin, talk about this. I want to get your opinion on this. Like there's people like you, they work a 9 to 5, that,
Yeah.
you're doing a podcast, you're improving yourself, you do different things, you have a
Mhm.
drive initiative. Other people, they work 9 to 5 and they can't even handle that right. They do nothing else right. Why do some people have quote unquote have it like you, like make themselves better? Other people like they're just satisfied and content with doing like the bare minimum.
Yeah, I think it's just like your core character and what you want. Like, it was hard for me to understand because, like, everybody doesn't have the same mentality. Some people just want enough and okay, I'm good. Like, I'm making 50,000 is enough to, get the food I want. I'm good. But for me, I've always like wanted to like be the best. But I don't necessarily care about being the best anymore. But it's more so about just improving myself and also I don't know if you ever taken the those personality tests, the Briggs Meyer personality test. So I kind of had like I got the NJ
Yeah, I'm a
personality.
I'm a INFJ.
Okay, yeah. So like my thing is called like the architect. I like thinking in the future, like what's coming down the pipeline, like what are the trends of the industry. So I realized that just as the field becomes more and more saturated, your skill set has to be higher and higher.
You gotta be, like you said, set yourself apart to be different.
Yeah. And I kind of see like other guys, they're struggling because they don't improve their skill set. They get stuck on some obsolete technology, making 45K or something, and the company just keeps them there.
And it's been an experience of people that don't improve themselves. They're the first ones to complain when somebody else is doing better than them, right? Like
Yeah.
why did Kevin get a promotion? Well, because Kevin did XYZ and you did nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know me, like even with the podcast, man, just how we mentioned earlier, you see on YouTube, guys are literally millionaires off of opening packages. I can't hate on that. It's like ingenious. Like, why did they get that? Because they put themselves out there. They did it. Like, so for me, it's like, let me do something and put it out there, and it could take off.
Yeah. And plus, you
So,
never know like how their background too. Like we're both on TikTok.
yeah.
Um, you remember the video that was like hot last year? It was like this female. It was like, what it was? What's written free in my head video, right? It like got millions of views, right? And people hate on her. And like people don't realize that's literally like her 900 videos she did on TikTok, right? So her
Yeah,
900 video on TikTok blew up and she had to make like lots of money off her, right? And people hate
exactly.
her like this is a bullshit video, blah blah. No one cares. I mean, she made a lot of money, and
Yeah.
she even got an NFT from Gary Vaynerchuk off it, but she didn't
Hmm.
like. She said, "Hey, that was actually my 900th video on TikTok." So,
Exactly.
and people don't see that. You gotta have to be patient, I think.
Exactly. And you know what was stopping that the so-called hater from putting it out themselves, like that's just jealousy. So yeah, I'm all about trying things out and putting it out there because like, even on LinkedIn, when I told you I got the 1.5 million views, I wasn't expecting that. I just put the stuff out there and for whatever reason it just caught on and blew up. So you
Yeah,
never know what's gonna blow up. You just gotta put it out there.
it's like one time, like last week, I did a poll. I have nothing to do with Bitcoin. I was just interested in hearing like, would you take a shot on Bitcoin, right? I was curious,
Mm,
right? It got like 30,000 views, I think, right? It just blew me
exactly.
away. Like what? Yeah, and you never know any social media what's going to hit, not hit, right? It's crazy.
A lot of times it's the stuff you don't even really put that much effort in. For some reason, that blows up. Like, and the good thing about blowing up late is like it forces your game to be on point so that when you do blow up, you're ready. You don't fumble the ball. Like
Yeah,
last thing you ever do is like blow up, but your production is shoddy. You don't have things together because you're gonna start losing opportunities when they get presented. So
yeah. I mean, perfect example. So I'm sure you know who like Dogface. I think Dogface 420 is on TikTok. The Cranberry guy. He did a song a year ago. Um, so he's the guy. He lip synced one of the Fleetwood Mac songs, right?
mhm.
And so he was telling a story about it. Like his car had broke down. He had to take the stable to work. He did the video. He was like, I'm not gonna post this, right?
Yeah,
You know. And then that same day, he watched a video from Gary Vaynerchuk and said, "Have one message for you. Whatever your video you don't want to post it right now." So he posted
yeah,
it and talk about life changing for that guy, right? I
yeah,
mean, like he has to be a millionaire by now. I mean, he blew up. He got a branding from Cranberry. He has like his own skateboard brand. I mean, it's this one 30-second video, him on a skateboard,
yeah.
drinking cranberry juice, lip sync the song. Like that's like I'm a big fan of TikTok. It's just all it takes, right? And there's so many stories like him. Bella Porch. There's so many people on there, right? You just never know
Yeah,
what's gonna hit, right?
exactly. You gotta try it out, man. And I'm almost forced to try it out now because like you see how inflation is, like price of houses, okay,
Yep.
it's $400,000 more expensive over the course of a year. Like there's no salary you can make that's gonna, cover that.
No.
So you got to find some kind of business related, like entrepreneurial type of opportunity. At least take the chance to look
Yeah.
for it. So
And like you with your post on LinkedIn and your podcast, who knows? Maybe some coding academy will reach out to you. Hey, Kevin, can we sponsor your podcast? I mean, just never know opportunities going to come.
exactly.
So let's go back to developers, right? So whatever your industry is, whatever it is, software developer, HR, sales, you need to get paid your value, right? You should get paid with your value, right?
Yeah.
But I think the problem nowadays is a lot of people want to get paid $50 an hour, but they have a $3 hour work ethic.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Like some people, I want to get paid $50 an hour, whatever the case be. Yeah, but you only give me $5 of value an hour, right? And like example I use like Amazon. If Amazon pays you $150,000 a year, they expect like $300,000 of profit from you, right? They expect to make 150 out. There's no nonprofits out there that's giving you salary just feel good about yourself, right? That's not the real world. Can you talk about that some?
Yeah, I think people that only have the work ethic, they get exposed pretty quick in this industry because you can't talk your way out of code. Like it either works or it doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, hey, deliver this feature. If you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to be able to deliver that feature. The reason that a lot of people, these companies started doing the video interviews was because when a lot of these people were being interviewed to do these like coding assignments, they get somebody that's in the industry to do it for them. So now you got to get on video and do live coding. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get exposed right then and there. This isn't the industry for people who have weak work ethics and who don't know what they're doing. You get fired pretty quickly, if you can even make it in the door in the first place. In regards to getting where your worth is, it just goes along with life. Like I think that the problem is nowadays we're kind of taught this idealized thing that, okay, you do a good job, somebody's just going to pay you what your so-called worth, but you get paid what you negotiate for as well. So if you have a good skill set and you can't negotiate, you're going to get underpaid. So it's a combination of knowing you having a good skill set and being able to negotiate. If you don't have the skill set, you're not going to last long in the industry. If you don't have the ability to negotiate, you're just going to be underpaid. So did that answer your question? Or
yeah, it did. Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Yeah, it did. So why did you? So you have your podcast too.
Yeah.
What's the reason for doing the podcast?
Well, me and one of my other friends, his name is Brian, man, we would just have these conversations on the phone. I'm like, man, this is good stuff, like good information. Like people need to hear this. Why not just, let's just do a podcast. And, he had other things going on. So, me and Terrence, who's a podcast co-host, we decided to just run with it. And, it's also like a good way to decompress because like a lot of times after you spend coding all day, it gives you a headache. You don't want to do more coding after work. So you need kind of to do something different to kind of decompress. And, in this industry, it's kind of isolated. Coding is kind of like an isolated thing. Like you're staring at a computer all day. You're not necessarily talking to people. So if you're whatever skills you use over and over, that skill gets better. So if you're just not talking to people, your social skills start kind of getting stunted. You know what I mean? So part of the reason for doing the podcast was just like to improve our speaking abilities. Like, when you get on the interview, you have to be able to eloquently talk about the solution. You can't just be like, I kind of think this and that. You know what I mean? Like they're going to look at you like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So, that and kind of like what we mentioned before, man, you just got to put yourself out there. You got to take an entrepreneurial opportunity. Why not? Like I got you just be sitting playing video games after work and just being stagnant. So why not at least try to build an audience and see if I can turn that into, a business opportunity.
So Kevin, you might not know this, But do you happen to know the percentage of software developers who suffer from like carpal syndrome? I think it's what's called carpal syndrome, where you, like your wrists get messed up from typing too
Mhm.
much. You don't happen to know that, do you?
Oh, thank God I never had that,
But is that a problem that you notice for
I
developers
haven't.
having stuff like that?
I guess like most of the coders I know, they're probably like 40 and younger. So I
Okay.
haven't. Yeah, but yeah, going back to the other podcast. The question about why I started the podcast too. Like, I'm half black, half Korean. And honestly, like, can you think about any? You have that Marquise Brownlee. But his stuff is like generally tech. But do you know like any black coding related podcasts or YouTube channels? It's not that many.
Yeah, I know a few. There's a Caleb King. I know him. You, of
Yeah,
course. I mean, maybe five at the most.
yeah. But there's like way more like hip hop, rap,
Oh yeah, yeah,
that kind of stuff. I'm kind of
yeah.
like,
Or like selling shoes or video
yeah.
games or stuff like that. Yeah,
So like, they're like, let's give the community something else that they can like, they see somebody that's kind of like them that's in the industry. Maybe they think, oh, I can do this too, you know, as opposed to, oh yeah, let's just watch a podcast about rap and these guys fighting or something like I don't know, it's just hard to find like content outside of entertainment.
yeah. So Kevin, next talk some about diversity in tech, right? So
Yes.
I've been involved in tech since like 2014, 2015, right? And
Mm.
from my point of view, it doesn't like anything's gotten better. I could be wrong, of course, but it's like always talk about diversity, this tech numbers,
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
It just doesn't seem like the numbers are getting any better, right? It's just like the same thing over and over again, right?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, well, the thing with tech is like either you know how to do the job or you don't. Like you can't just
It's more like a
grab a
it's more like a what's it called meritocracy, meritocracy, whatever.
meritocracy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
You
Either
can't
you
just
do
bring
it
a
or you
guy.
can't.
You can't bring a guy off the street and say, hey, here, just figure it out because he's not going to be productive. He has to either know what he's doing or he doesn't. So, you know, I think that's kind of like, with the podcast, it's like, I want to showcase that, hey, you can do it, but you have to put in the effort. Like nobody can baby you and just give you a job because you have to learn on your own how to do it. But yeah, I don't think companies are able to afford bringing on people that don't know how to do the job. You know what I mean? So that's the hard thing about improving those so-called diversity numbers. And I know, it's not all that diverse when it comes to certain ethnicities. Like I'm usually the only black guy, maybe on the whole tech, like in my current company, I know like one other black guy in the whole like company that does tech, so it's not a bunch, but in order to increase the numbers, you got to kind of at least say, hey, you can do it, but you got to be willing to put in the effort. So I think that's kind of like the hard part. If they want to improve the numbers, how do they find the people who want to learn this, And
So here's a question for you. So you're in the Dallas area. Dallas is pretty known for tech, like Dallas, downtown
yeah.
Dallas, playing a lot of tech people.
Mm.
And those who are not from Dallas, South Dallas are kind of like, like the poor place, more,
Yeah.
I won't say downtrodden, but less access to resources, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this place is a tech company in downtown Dallas. They want to recruit like, diverse talent, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it their responsibility to go to South Dallas and find the talent? Or should the people of South Dallas go to the tech people? Like most tech companies have meetups, have, networking groups.
Mm.
So the tech company be going down to where the talent is, diverse talent, or is the response of diverse talent to go to the tech people?
I would say they kind of have to meet in the middle, like if the kids or, the people in South Dallas, they don't even know about these opportunities. They can't be like, hey, bring us in. But, the companies can't bring in somebody that doesn't really have the desire to be there. You know what I mean? Like certain jobs, you can kind of bring people on and let them learn on the job. You know what I mean? But with programming, you can't.
Yeah, I think a lot of tech people would say, well, if they really wanted to find a job, they show initiative, they find a way there. But then again, like,
Mhm.
can they really get there? Maybe they don't have a car, or maybe the bus or DART is too dangerous, right?
Yeah.
And then again, I think a lot of people, in like the unrepresented areas, like they're like, okay, they should be coming to us. Well, no one's
Yeah.
going to come to you in life, right? And give you an opportunity. You got to go fight for it, I
Yeah.
think, So I definitely has to be some
Exactly.
kind of common ground.
Exactly. I think, it's just an exposure thing. Like, we could find all kinds of, like on YouTube, when it comes to Black entertainment, we could find all kinds of stuff about, sports, music, etc. But what's going to grab that kid's interest over there, and make him want to join tech? The interesting thing that I heard, it's like my cousin's, her daughter, she's like 16. She said, "Oh, I want to grow up to be a coder," and that was kind of like unheard of, like from a young Black girl. Like when I grew up, I never knew a Black woman that just say, "Hey, I want to be a coder." But so to hear her say it, it's kind of becoming like more in vogue now. So like with what I'm trying to do with the podcast is trying to showcase like, hey, I look like you. I'm not smarter than you. I just went out and got it, and you could get it too. And these kids, they have to see someone else that's doing it, and I can kind of point them towards resources. Like literally everything you need to do to start coding is free. So what's stopping you? You know?
Yeah, and age doesn't matter, right? You can be 80 years old or 8 years old coding.
Yeah.
Because I was on I never go on Clubhouse anymore, but last week I just happened to go there to say, let me see what's on there.
Yeah.
And there's like tech conversation, and there's an 11-year-old kid on there talking about how he learned to code, how he coded his own NFT.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, basically what it said, like, you messed me, right? There's no way you're 11. Like, no, yes, I'm 11. I promise I'm 11. I did this right. Like,
Yeah.
he's 11. You can tell like a young kid, right? Young boy,
Yeah.
right? He said, I just learned a year ago, and like he just broke down everything he can. Like, people like, we would hire you right now if your parents let us, right? And so age should
Exactly.
not be a limit. Like, it's same like, on YouTube a while ago on I think it was a Python channel, and this person 75 years old said, hey, I'm 75. I started learning Python 3 years ago. I just do it for
Yeah.
fun, right? I'm not trying to make money. I just do it, right?
Yeah.
I think coding is one of the few professions that it doesn't matter how smart you are, how old you are, how young. You just have to be able to do the job. And yeah, I think you have, of course, like some kind of patience. You have some skill to it, of course, but like,
Yeah.
it's like if you want to make money, coding is, I think, one of the best ways to go. I think, from my opinion.
And even if a company doesn't hire you, you could freelance and build your own applications. Like all of these kids have phones. The phones have software on it. Like, they're using TikTok, etc. as software. Like, why not build your own app? You know what I mean? It's one of the amazing things about the software industry is, one, just about everything you need to know is free. You can get a free version of it. You get VS Code for free. You can get courses for free. You know what I mean? The resources are free. And two, people are actually willing to help you out. Like, a lot of other industries, you probably can't just reach out to some guy and he'll literally show you how to do the job. With software, if you get a good mentor, he say, hey, come work with me on this code base. I'll show you how to, integrate and be. Because I remember even at one point, you were bringing on like junior guys to work on your application. They had a senior guy watching over them. You know what I mean? Like essentially a free internship. Like there's so many free opportunities and to learn. You just gotta go get it.
Yeah. Like I know a person out of LA, this female. She's 23 now. She just graduated college. But if she was 70, when she was 16, she made an app, and what the app would do, you would like take the app and go into your closet, and it would match what you should wear that day, right? And she was 16, she built like, you're 16, you built an app that matches clothes, like, and maybe it's not as big a deal as I think it is, but like, I just blew my mind away. Like, you did that at 16? Yeah, she showed it to me. Like, yeah, you just do a quick scan of the clothes, and I go, wear this, like instantly, right?
Yeah, man, it's like so many amazing opportunities out there, man. People just gotta jump on it. Like there's literally nothing stopping them. Like it's not somebody that's blocking them from a computer. Say, hey, no, you can't get on this. Like you can literally, if you have to, you can code on your phone.
I know. So talk about this, and just talk about females in tech for a minute. And so I don't know where the stat is, but I know I've seen it, because I've referenced several times. So I'm kind of making the numbers up, but you get the idea. So when a female is like in the 5th or 6th grade, 80% of them are interested in STEM, high number. By the time they graduate, only 10 to 50% are interested in STEM. What happens from 6th to 12th grade that makes like 70% of females like, I don't do STEM anymore? Is it societal pressures, or like, it's too. I mean, it's like, what is it? I'm doing. I mean, I'm sure it's hard and all, but like, why is those numbers drop down so much? And males pretty much stay the same. Don't really get males drop down, some not like 70%.
I mean, I can't really speak for the current generation, but I know like during my generation, coding wasn't looked at as sexy. It wasn't looked at as fun. It looked at it as nerds. Like, what was that show? Freaks and Geeks. Like,
Yeah.
pretty much what a coder was looked at. Oh, this nerdy dude, probably in his mom's basement playing video games and Dungeons and Dragons. That was like a coder.
Like somebody 40 years old, still in the basement of the mom's house, eating their Doritos and smoking dope, and
exactly. So, maybe these girls are not seeing other women that are coders and saying, hey, I really want to do this.
I think that's the big thing right there. Yeah.
Or, here's the thing, like, why does every industry have to be 50% this, 50% that? It's not realistic. Maybe some women maybe that's just not what they want to do. You know what I mean? Maybe because coding is kind of an isolated thing, you have to have a certain type of personality to really even want to be in this industry. So, maybe some of these women prefer something more social, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like we could say, why aren't there more men in nursing? Maybe they just don't want to be there.
Yeah, I think there's a point. I think too many of us were like, we need X amount of this here or X amount of that here. Like, no, I don't think it works like that.
Exactly.
And like you're right. Back in the day, like you're a man nurse. Like, what's wrong with you, right? Are you kind of funny, whatever? Like you're not a real man. You're a nurse, like,
Exactly.
But now it's more common.
Yeah. So, I think at the most, like society could just showcase more women that are coders and say, this is cool things you can make, but we can't say, okay, we need 50% women in the industry. Like you can't just shoehorn people into places they don't want to be at because it's not going to work,
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So next, question I follow on LinkedIn. I think you just did this post yesterday, or I don't know when you did the post, but you did the post where you basically said, is software development or coders or programmers, are we the only industry that talks about depression so much? Like, why do we talk about depression so much? Do other industries talk about this? Can you talk about coding? I mean, because I know there's in the entrepreneur startups, a lot of talking about startup depression, founder depression, no one really talks about it. Can you talk something about like why you made that post and your thought process about it?
Because I kind of think, man, you hear a lot of the coders talk about, mental health and burning out and this and that. You notice like a lot of programmers, they get older, they start getting burnt out. Like, I talked to some of my one of my coder friends. He's been in the industry a couple years longer than me. He's starting to get into trucking because he's kind of burnt out on just coding. Like, why are so many people getting burnt out? And even in the video game industry, like they used to have these coders work all day and then they sleep under their desk and they come back. They don't ever leave the building. It's like they're just literally there in the building all day.
That's a Google model, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much why the campus is so good. They don't want you to leave. So it's like, what is the ultimate purpose? Like, you can't have a life, even I feel burnt out, sometimes. Kind of like why I'm starting to do other things like the podcast. Like, I love coding, but I don't know if I want to. The industry, the higher up you get, the more responsibilities you get. It starts wearing on you mentally, Like, okay, say you work at this big company, it's Friday night, and it's deployment night. For whatever reason, this function isn't working, and people can't buy a product. Your senior guy, guess who's going to get that call at like 7, 8 at night? You're gonna have to stop everything you're doing, get to a computer, fix the problem where the company's losing millions of dollars. It's like that's a lot of pressure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
in those instances, I think if you're a bad company, you would have like everyone working 9 to 5. You're never gonna leave, right? And then still make your people do that kind of stuff. You're a good company. Well, a bad company, you were like, hey, software coders, hey, can I have like 4 hours off tomorrow and go see my son play basketball? Bad company will say, no, you need a code because this is going on.
Yeah.
A good company will say, you know what? Go see your son's basketball game, because in the future, when something bad happens, I need to call you at 2 a.m. and I can have a good conscience calling you at 2 a.m. knowing I'll let you take time off for your family, right?
Exactly. Like, like, and plus, like, it almost feels like you're a slave of the computer because, like we mentioned, if your skills aren't up to par, are you not being competitive? Everybody else is studying. So if you're not studying, it feels like, okay, I'm starting to become obsolete. I don't have the newest technology. I don't have the right frameworks. 'Cause, one thing a lot of people don't realize is if you bet on the wrong set of frameworks, you just wasted a lot of time because you can't find a job. Say, for example, React is a sexy JavaScript framework now. And, most of the big jobs that I see, they're asking for React, but I'm primarily Angular, so just from that alone, I miss out on job opportunities. So, there's a lot of pressure in the industry. Like you have to bet right, you have to work hard. And, if you bet wrong, you spent a lot of effort on learning something that, is not going to help you progress. So
I have to imagine there's a lot of pressure for when someone picks their first coding language, right? Because they have to get it right, sort of kind of right.
You remember Ruby on Rails? That was the real hot thing at one point.
Yeah. That's the sexy thing back in the day.
Now it's like almost legacy technology, and it was just that quick.
Yeah. So what new tech out there excites you?
So I mentioned I'm getting into math. I want to get into like the 3D space, game programming. So I don't necessarily want to be in the game programming industry because I heard the work conditions there are pretty bad. But what a lot of companies are moving towards is the metaverse. And gaming pretty much has had the metaverse before the metaverse. They had like Second Life, PlayStation Home. So all these other companies are starting to catch on to that. And the reason I've heard Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard, it wasn't to compete against Sony. It was to compete, to prevent Facebook, Google, Amazon from buying them and get into that space. Like, the metaverse, that's the next big frontier. That's where people are, the next big fortunes are going to be made. Like whoever owns the servers where you log into the so-called metaverse, they're going to make a ton of money because people are buying digital land in their metaverse. You know what I mean? So I know Microsoft, they probably want to own that, just like Facebook wants to own that. So having the skills, 3D skills, that's you're going to pretty much be able to write your own check. And that's not an easy skill set to pick up. It's like a lot of intense mathematics. So, that's kind of like where I'm positioning my skill set. And, I've always liked video games, so I can use that same skill set to make games on my own time.
Kevin, your podcast, is it like you and your co-host talking?
Yeah.
You ever have guests on there? Are you gonna bring on guests later on?
Yeah, occasionally we have our friend Brian. He comes on. He's a fellow coder. We just had like our first interview the other day. But I think what we wanted to do before we really started hammering out the interviews was getting everything set up and looking good. Like he recently upgraded his camera. We both have the Sony ZV-1. So, now our podcast looks a lot better.
Yeah, those cameras make a difference. Like if you go to my first podcast, I had like a webcam, basic BS microphone. Yeah, it's. I mean, even like going for like I have a Mac, even going from like the FaceTime internal camera on the MacBook to a webcam, the difference is unbelievable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even close, right? And then I can actually get a real camera, yes, or microphone, yes. It's a big difference.
It's it's a little bit harder to advertise your show and actually get on guests if your production looks kind of low quality. So we kind of had to upgrade our setup before we really started pushing it.
Yeah. And you do the podcast at your house or your friend's house?
We actually using I think it's like Melon streaming app because he's in LA. So
okay.
Yeah, so it's like a split screen thing. I'm on one side, he's on the other side.
Okay. So different locations.
Yeah.
So what's your vision for your career? Like, is your vision like become the CTO of Microsoft, Amazon, to become, like your own startup founder, or like just go up through the corporate realm and like do software development? Like what's your vision for yourself looking down in the future?
So probably doing something entrepreneurial, like I'm open, social media thing blows up, the podcast blows up. Like I don't ever want to give up coding, you know what I mean? Like if that blows up, I'm gonna still be coding, probably still working at some company, but I just want to be able to utilize the social media and you just pulling millions from that. And I think what I really want most, I don't need to be like I have $100 million or something. I just want enough, enough money to where
I have freedom. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like working tomorrow, so I'm gonna just take tomorrow off.
You know what? That's a good point too. Like, if you're a developer, developing is one of the few jobs you can have that you can do it anywhere in the world, right?
Exactly.
You can be on the beach in Hawaii. You can be, somewhere in the Brazil or Czechoslovakia. As long as you have a good Wi-Fi hospital case, you can do your job anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And that freedom, man, is unbeatable. Like you know what I'm saying? I've worked hard my whole life, man. I don't necessarily want to be like a corporate slave forever, where like, man, I'm 60. I can finally enjoy life. You know what I mean? But
I was saying, you work 45 years at a company, retired, and then have 10 years of life left, and then by that time, can you really enjoy it, right? You're 60, you're probably broken down, bad back, whatever. Can you like travel, do stuff, right? You probably have bad health, right? So then you just watching TV every day, right? Why not enjoy it where you can?
Yeah. So, so I want to be able to get that money and enjoy it, before I get too old. So, so I don't necessarily want to be like the CEO of a big company, because you pretty much become a slave to that company.
Mm-hmm.
Like your life revolves around that. But I see people are making decent money off of like YouTube and this and that. So I will continue my coding related endeavors, but kind of like utilize that money as well to pretty much, I guess, buy my freedom, like free up my time to do what I want to do. Like I'll probably be programming games instead of, another CRUD application, another forms based, fill out this form,
Mm-hmm.
send a reply to the database. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah. I think you're right. I think there's never been a better opportunity for people to make money than it is now, right?
Exactly. Like I see a lot of posts, people talking about, okay, they made 6 figures off of LinkedIn. They made 8 figures off of what is it, Twitter? You know what I mean? Like, how are they doing that? Why not look into that?
Yeah. So Kevin, next. So what's something that you do not like about the tech industry?
I mean, I would say it's the constant grind, and it's not really stable, man. Like, if how I mentioned before, if you bet on the wrong set of technologies, you just became deprecated. You're working on legacy projects, and it's like the constant grind. You have to learn something new. You can't just learn something like 2 years ago and just, okay, I got my free time. No, it's more like, okay, no, I gotta learn this new framework after work. I gotta learn this new, it's just constant learning, constant grinding. And the interviews are becoming harder and harder. So you got to prepare for that as well. So, this is the industry that can burn you out. So, you got to kind of like manage your mentality if you don't want to get burnt out. That's like really what I don't like about the industry. Like I love coding, but I don't like being forced to spend like nearly all of my free time, learning coding stuff I may not want to learn. Why can't I just make a project I want to make? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And another stuff, I think a lot of people they'll get confused by work-life balance. People say, well, I'm not going to do this. I want work balance. I mean, you think about this only life now, right? Because the work and life is so interchangeable, right? We're on call 24/7 pretty much, right? You got to be responsive, Yeah. So Kevin, next, what's your take on this? Let's suppose a developer's lucky enough to get an offer from a big company like a Google and a startup.
Yeah.
So either Google getting paid $150,000 a year, probably $200,000 a year, or a startup has funding, right? Because of course, if most startups have no funding, that'd be no pay. What do you recommend? Going to Google, making $200,000 a year, or going to a startup with funding, maybe get only paid $100,000 a year but get equity? What's your take on both of those situations or opportunities?
And honestly, I'll probably go with the Google offer, because once you get in at Google, you pretty much write your own checks afterwards. Like you see a lot of ex Google, ex Facebook, this and that, whatever. They just have tons of hundreds of thousands of followers just based off of that.
Yeah,
like they can create their own entrepreneurial opportunity. The startup, the company could blow up, but it might not. So
yeah.
What if it doesn't? You're like, oh man, I should have went with Google.
So what's your take on, if you work for Google, you'll probably be only doing like maybe one small thing. But if you go to a startup, you might be doing everything code related. How about that point?
I would still say go with Google for a year, and then if you want to work for a startup after that, then you can go. Like
Because
get Google on your
probably easy to get hired, right? Because you're ex Google, right?
yeah, exactly. Like get that on your resume. You're pretty much gold from there.
So, from your point of view, what are a lot of junior developers getting wrong about the job search process?
I think they think it's just based off of skills. It's not. Like I keep telling them like visibility,
Yeah, basically
visibility.
no job nowadays. I don't care what your career field is: HR, sales, marketing,
Yeah.
truck driver. Nothing's just based on your skills anymore.
They want to know your story. Like a lot of junior developers, they get reached out to because they say, "Oh, I used to work at McDonald's, and I taught myself to code." And somebody sees him, say, "Oh, okay, this guy works hard. Let me talk to him."
They have some initiative.
Exactly. Like they're what junior developers have to realize is like thousands of you competing for the same position. So if you have 1,000 of a similar looking item, you're going to look for something that looks different. What makes you look different from the masses? You know what I mean? Unless you're just like supremely skilled, it's going to be hard to distinguish yourself from the standpoint of being skilled. So
yeah, unless you build an app that killed death, it's gonna be kind of hard, like put yourself apart from everyone else.
Exactly. So it's like you have to maybe start a YouTube channel, a blog, or something to where they look at that and say, "Oh, okay, this is interesting. Like nobody else is doing this." So
yeah, what I tell people all the time, the job search, I don't remember what the job search is. Like I always tell them, if you're gonna do a job search, start a blog, right, and like document what you're doing. Like today I did this, tomorrow I did this, right,
yeah,
and so people look back at your history. Like, okay, they've been grinding it out. They're actually trying and they're doing stuff right. I think this makes you more personable too, right?
yeah. But the thing people have to realize is nobody knows what you're doing unless you advertise it, like you showcase it in some form or fashion. So you could be like the hardest worker ever, but if you don't write about it, if you don't showcase your project, you're just like the guy who does nothing.
Yeah, and there's people out there know you shouldn't do that because you're being egotistical. You're being prideful, whatever. But I mean, like you said, it's a game we got to play nowadays, right? You got to put yourself out there and tell people what you're doing. People want to know your story. Everyone has an interest in story. Put yours out there.
Exactly. And like what I found is you just gotta learn to tune those voices out. Like those people, they're not paying your bills, so who cares what they think? You know what I mean? Like you got to do what's best for you and your family. And to me, like egotistical is like you saying, "Oh man, I'm so good, like I'm amazing," or you just showcasing your project. That's not really egotistical. That's just like interesting. Like, oh, he's making a cool project. You know what I mean? Like people like seeing stuff like that.
Yeah, and for the stuff I do, like always makes me like out of the blue, someone to reach out. Hey, Jason, ain't talked to you a while, but I really enjoy your post, right? I'm like, first of all, I had no idea you were freaking looking at my stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that always blows me away. And then back, we talked earlier about asking for help on LinkedIn. It's been my experience. Like, I'm kind of mixed up, but like every 10 people ask for help, at least 8 say yes, right? So I would definitely advise people to ask for help, right? Of course, 1 out of 100 gonna be a jerky boy and jackass, and like be just a jackass. But more often than not, they're gonna like help you out. And maybe they don't help you out right then. They might say, "Hey, follow up with me next month," or "Hey, I can't do this for no round, but I'm gonna introduce you to Bob, Jane, and Susan," right?
Yeah.
What's the saying? The hungry mouth don't get fed, and
exactly.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You got to ask for help, right? You got to ask for it.
Yeah, that was my biggest problem in my earlier days. I like scared, like somebody's gonna say something mean or something, but I found that.
Of course, don't be spammy about it. No stalk, just be nice, respectful,
Yeah, like as long as you're not being annoying, like every single thing, it's like you redirecting a conversation to you or your product, like hijacking conversations and all of that kind of stuff. As long as you're respectful, people like seeing you posting your thoughts or what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So Kevin, we talk about some of social media, and you do like to post on LinkedIn and TikTok.
Yeah.
What makes TikTok so fun for you? What do you enjoy about TikTok? What makes it go to as a backup to LinkedIn?
I think like with TikTok, you can at least get views because it kind of sucks that you put an effort into something and nobody watches. It's like you're just talking to yourself or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with TikTok, at least you can get views, and two, it's really simple. Like they may they probably have the best interface for uploading videos.
Oh yeah,
right?
it's that's great. Whoever did that like deserves a medal or something.
Yeah, it's ingenious. You just make a short 3-minute clip, talk, hit, maybe put a little text thing above it and upload, and it's up there. So, you can reach a lot of people. TikTok, I believe that's the most popular social media platform now. You reach a lot of people, and you don't have to spend a lot of time fighting to upload your video.
Yeah, so. I think it's pretty much like on Facebook, Instagram, like, even with paid ads, you're not gonna see anyone, right? It's so set up, no one's gonna share, right? Where TikTok, I mean, like we talked before, I've had videos on TikTok only had like 4 or 5 views. Other ones have, a couple thousand views, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where Facebook, Instagram, yeah, you're not getting nothing on Instagram unless you're like an influencer or a known brand, like Kanye West or like McDonald's, or paying big money for ads.
It's like like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. All of those are pretty much shut out. Like unless you got in early, like you say, you're a big influencer.
Yeah,
nobody's gonna see your stuff. So.
Yeah, I definitely think, like we said, pre-talk, LinkedIn and TikTok are pretty much still the wild west, so to speak.
Yeah. So the people that get in early here before they start shutting the gates, they're gonna be good. So I'm kind of trying to get in before it closes, so to say.
Yeah. So Kevin, are there any like or any software developer people that you follow or that like a mentor to you that you like go to for advice you just follow in general?
I follow like a ton of them. Like if they have an interesting post on LinkedIn, pretty much end up following them. Like I can't really think of anyone in particular. I just kind of if they post something interesting, I usually just give them a follow.
Nice. So back to the junior developers. What's your advice for junior developers to make themselves like more what's the word looking for? Not like more career ready, more ready to fight the process of hey, I pretty much got to battle 1,000 other developers. I got to be competitive. Yeah. What's your advice on that?
Well, I think one of the keys is you have to carefully define what aspect of software you want to be in. You know what I mean? And from there, that's how you can make like a laser sharp program. You don't want to just be bouncing around from this to this to this to this because you're not really becoming competent. Like for junior developers, honestly, they need to just pick one language and stick with it. They don't need like 5 different languages they're dabbling with. You're just wasting your time doing that. Like pick one language. Okay, you say, okay, I want to be a web developer. Front end, learn JavaScript, stick with that, get really good, master that. Like, and I would say, people need to refine their focus. Like you're a junior developer, but you come out of boot camp saying you're full stack. And the problem with that is like you're opening yourself up to a lot more questions. Like you go to an interview, I'm a full stack guy. They can ask you about SQL, no SQL, authentication, authorization. That's just the back end stuff. Now you got the front end stuff, Webpack, Angular, NGRX, so.
And they're like, well, my boot camp told me to say front end developer. That's what I did.
Exactly. Like, but what people have to realize is their resume is not like a police report. You don't have to write down every single thing you touched and when. Pick the technology. It's a highlight reel. Like, okay, do you want to be a basketball player? You want to be a football player? You can't list like everything. I want to be a football player, and I'm gonna focus on football. I want to be a JavaScript developer. I'm gonna just focus on JavaScript.
And they find even more. You want to be a football player. You want to be the quarterback, the running back, the X, the slot. The cover one. All that kind of. What exactly you want to be. You got to niche down, like, right?
Exactly. So like, kind of like find that niche and then become the master of it. And that's how you stand out. Like you don't want to be that generalist who's, I'm okay at everything. Like why would they want to pick you over that guy who's like the best CSS, HTML, JavaScript guy, that they've seen?
So Kevin, what's the process for going from a junior to senior developers? Like, is that something you decide on your own? It's like, I'm a senior developer now. Is there kind of internal tests you take somewhere? Does your company decide that? How do you go from being a junior to a senior developer?
Honestly, I kind of think that's an arbitrary term. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like, okay, now I'm a senior developer. It's just like if the company that you get hired at says, okay, you're a senior, then you pretty much considered a senior. Like after 2 years in the industry, I was considered a senior at AT&T. But one of the ways that kind of fast tracked me is like when I started working, Angular, 2 or whatever, it was in beta. So I started working with that since it was in beta. So once I got my second job, people who've been there for 5, 6, 7 year programming, they didn't have more experience than me in Angular. So, I was almost like a go-to guy because I worked with this technology since I was so young. So that kind of made me like almost like I don't want to say authority, but like a go-to guy when an Angular problem comes up. Or ask Kevin, So that's how I was able to kind of like fast track to senior. But like after 2 years, if you're really good at what you're doing, you can probably get a senior role somewhere at a company.
There's something come after senior developer, is like another title after that.
Usually like a team lead, or you can move into like architect, or some people just get out of code and they get into management. But I think I'm probably gonna stick with like, stay in the coding realm. I actually like having my hands on the code.
Is there a certain language out there you want to learn that you haven't done yet?
I was playing around with C#, but I'm kind of to the point where I just made a decision. Let me just stick with TypeScript, and I'm more focused now on actually building something than just playing around with languages. Like I want to build like a game or something. Like language is kind of like secondary. So I'm not too focused on like learning a new language.
Okay. So Kevin, talk about this, and I can't think of the term. Like suppose like you're coding, right?
Yeah.
And like people don't realize that like one simple web page, you might take like page and page of code, right? And like you might do the code and then you have a bug. You might maybe a period should be a apostrophe, or big capital T should be a little s. What's the process for going through there? I think it's called quality assurance or something like that. Can you talk about that process, how coders got to go through and like painstakingly go in detail and find the mistakes they made, and how that's not an easy process. A lot of tech people are like, well, hey, you coded it. It should be simple to do this like in a few minutes, right? Can you talk about the painstakingly detailed process of code, like, find your mistakes, find your bugs, all that kind of stuff?
So like, that kind of error, that's a syntax error, and that'll be caught like, by your IDE or whatever. Like, say you're doing Angular, you're running the Angular CLI, you type a little error, then you save it, then you'll see at the bottom, it's red down there. So there's an error. So they'll tell you the line that you made the error on. Where quality, the QA team, where they really come in is your code doesn't have syntax errors. It's more so like a functional error. Like you expect this nav bar to do this, but it's doing something else. So like that's where they'll discover the issues you make. But in terms of like syntax errors, your IDE should find that. But like the functional errors is where like it gets like more difficult. Like, why is this nav bar acting weird? Why isn't this popping up when it should? And the process of that is usually inspecting and looking at the logs, and it'll generally tell you like the area of where the function messed up sometimes.
Do you have any plans, any interest in being like a product manager?
No, I don't. Those kind of roles kind of get you away from the code. I don't really.
You want to stay hands-on coding then?
Yeah, because I actually enjoy building stuff. I don't, like when you're managing, it's more like just dealing with people. Hey, everybody, what are you doing? When is this available? Like, I don't really want to. Plus they have to deal with business more. Like, why isn't this product ready? You said it would be ready. They get yelled at and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm not too into that.
So, so of course, remote work's a big thing now, with all the COVID stuff going on.
Yeah.
So for you, what's your take on this, right? Because I'm a believer, a lot of people are not good at remote work, right? Like me, I'm not good at remote work. Like if I'm at home, let me be clear. I like remote work. I can't work from home, right? Because like I'm making 2 or 3 meals a day. I'm binge watching something. I'm going to sleep. I'm not going to work. I have to go somewhere. I don't say I want to go to a cubicle, work 40 hours a week, or have some work on my shoulder. I have to go somewhere, right? What's your take on? So, what's your philosophy on that? How do you, if you had a company, how do you make sure you hire people that actually know how to do remote work? If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense.
I mean, I think you just gotta, and kind of, does this guy deliver? Like you don't really know until they're actually working there, because if you just have a guy that's screwing up, period, like if you bring him to the office, you'd be probably playing solitaire or something all day. Like, but you know, some people, they just like you mentioned, like there's too many distractions at home. But like, you know, with you have the work ethic, so you're gonna say, I'm gonna remove myself from this distracting environment and get to somewhere where I can be more productive. So, you know, they would just have to kind of like look at the character of the person they hired. And, you know, if that person has high enough character, they're gonna find an environment to where that's actually conducive to work. But I don't really believe in like forcing everybody needs to come to the office so, you know, I can look over their shoulder. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Kevin, if you could go back to the beginning of your tech career, is there anything that you would have done differently?
No, honestly, probably not, because, you know, everything builds on each other, even mistakes. Like if I didn't make this mistake, I would have never had the knowledge to do this differently. Like, for example, this current job that I have now, the main reason that I got this was I failed an interview prior to that. And, you know, the feedback I got, there was like, okay, he was coding a solution, but he didn't speak out about his thought process. Like he didn't talk through what he was doing. I didn't even know prior to that you were supposed to do that. So
yeah, I think that was great for you. Whoever did that did you a favor. You might have got the job. I think they did a great favor giving that feedback.
exactly. And you know, I actually took that to get this current job, which paid more. Like when I did the live coding assignment, I was talking through everything I was doing. So, you know, you got to kind of like, you can't get stuck on your failures. You have to look at them as like, okay, this is knowledge I can take to improve my game plan.
Kevin, is there like a dream tech job out there that you want?
No, not really. I pretty much want to be able to work on what I want to work on, and like even in the game industry, like it sounds cool, but if I'm making somebody else's game, you know, I probably have to do a bunch of crunch, this and that. So I'll say the dream for me is more like the financial freedom, having the freedom of time to work on stuff I want to work on.
So most software developers, I'm pretty sure most of them have to have a portfolio, right?
Yeah.
What would you tell the ones who say, well, I'm just gonna have a resume, I don't need a portfolio?
Yeah, like when you first get in industry, yeah, you have to have a portfolio. But as you become more senior, yeah, the companies you get hired at, the body of work speaks for itself. But like it goes back to the question, like you're competing against 1,000 U's. So what makes you stand out? Like what doesn't stand out more than an awesome website? You know what I mean? Like, oh wow, this is amazing. They can actually visit it. You know what I mean? They can go to the GitHub and see the code. Like that kind of solidifies you as somebody who knows how to develop, you know? So
Kevin, if people don't know, what is GitHub? What's the purpose of a GitHub?
so GitHub is like it's a repository to where you can upload your code. Is you know, Git is version control. GitHub is like the actual repository. So what like version control is, like if you're into like video games or whatever, think of it almost like a save file for your code. Like you're saving different versions of your code. And say multiple users are working on the same code base. You know, Git enables everybody to check in their branch and get their code merged with the central repository.
And other people look at your code, see if it's good code, bad code, like source product, you know, like do a deep dive on it.
Yeah, so you're checking your actual work into GitHub, so when people can look at your source code directly. So companies that like to see people's coding habits, they'll just visit your GitHub and they have a direct ability to kind of assess whether your code is up to par for their organization.
Because most people GitHubs are public, right? Unless they work for a big company, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So tell me this. Tell me if my reason is logical here. So as a non-tech founder, we go on someone's GitHub, right? And they'll say, okay, Bob the developer has 1,000 commits. Now within a month, we'll say, now you probably can't say if it's good code, bad code, no code.
Yeah.
But in theory, okay, this guy did 1,000 commits, and a commit can be something as simple as anything, right?
Yeah.
But in theory, you should be able to say, okay, Bob developed 1,000 commits in a 30-day time period. In theory, I have to imply that he's working on this code to make it better, right? Versus someone who's like maybe 2 commits in the last 6 months, right?
Okay, so it kind of goes back to that. Activity does look impressive to a certain level, but Like if you're a non-tech guy, I would honestly go reach out to a tech guy to look at it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because, activity is not necessarily good activity.
Because the commit could be anything, right?
Exactly. So, yeah, you got to get somebody that kind of assess the quality of work of what's actually going on. Because a guy that committed 6 months ago, he might be doing something really impressive. And, something came up to where he just doesn't commit as often. Whereas the other guys like doing console, hello world in 20 different languages.
That's a good point. So any more advice for non-tech founders to bring on the right talent?
Yeah. Honestly, I would say just like anything else, kind of like, say you're an athlete and you're playing in the industry, it's imperative that you learn about financial management, even though that's not technically what you're doing, because if you don't, somebody can fleece you. You know what I mean? So if you're a non-tech guy, but you're primarily hiring tech guys, I'm not going to say like you need to learn programming, but learn about the different, like, okay, this Python is good for this, JavaScript's good for that. Like you got to kind of have an idea of the industry of, these people that I'm hiring. I have to know what they're doing. I have to have some sort of idea about that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, at least speak the language, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At a bare minimum.
Exactly, because otherwise they can just fleece you with throwing around a bunch of buzzwords that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I know as a non-tech founder, I mean, it's a challenge finding the right tech team, right? It's not easy, right? It's a challenge. I often sometimes think, man, if I go back in time, I should just learn how to code, right? But they're like, would I really want to learn to code? Do I really have the resources to learn? Like, especially know what I'm building, Kevin. Like, it's not like simple website, right? It's like all this complicated stuff, right? Do I really have the time to do that? Everything else I'm doing, that's why I say, look, if you find a good developer, I think you need to overpay them, right? Especially if they're doing what you want them to do.
Yeah. If you find a really good guy that's pretty much running the tech things, do what it takes to make them stay there. Like you'll save so much money. Like a problem a lot of companies have, they want to be, they're thinking short term. So they want to, remember, I don't know if you've seen the post today. It's kind of going viral where the woman say, I think she was like a recruiter. She said, okay, we had a budget to offer this girl 130K, but I only offered her 85K because that's what she asked for.
Yeah, and it should be gone a year or 2 years easily.
Yeah, exactly. So you start lowballing people and all of that. You save money in the short term, but in the long run, it's way more costly because, okay, this guy is your tech go-to guy, so he's gonna be bringing people onto the company. So you want that guy to stay there at your company because the turnover is going to be way more costly from hiring a bunch of bad apples.
And like, I don't understand for people, they do interviews. They're like, how much you get paid your last job? And well, first of all, it's none of your business,
Right.
Should you be paying? You should be offering my pay. Well, you don't know the budget for this company job. You're going to base off my salary from the last job. That's BS, right?
Yeah.
And then you get low ball and they get a better offer.
Yeah. So if you got a really good guy or girl or whatever, just pay them good. Because they're, like if tech isn't your specialty and it's theirs, they'll save you a lot of money.
Yeah, and not only tech, I think every industry is like that nowadays, right? People getting lowballed or like, and just my experience being in the military, being a couple of like civilian jobs, stuff like that, like, and people may agree or disagree. But my experience, like every organization I've been with, 1 to 10, 50, maybe 20% if you're lucky, 20% of your people are actually like doing good stuff, right? They're showing initiative. They're doing extra right. They're making themselves better. The people on there better. Everyone else, I'm not saying they're horrible employees, but they're doing the bare minimum right. They're doing 9 to 5. If you tell them to do ABC, they're doing ABC and that's it, right? And so you got to take care of that 20%, and you got to do things that make sure they don't get burnt out. I think
Exactly. Those are the guys that that really make your company go, like that. The top, that top tier, that's self-motivated. Those are the pieces.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to overpay them a little bit, like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that's like kind of irreplaceable. Like you might pay them an extra 10, 20K, but they'll save you hundreds of thousands or more.
But because of them, you're not going to have a deployment problem at 2 a.m. because they make sure any potential issues never came up. They're going to what's I looking for? They're going to troubleshoot or murder board every single possible scenario and have solutions in there,
Exactly. And they're not gonna just bring their friends onto the company. Like their friends don't know how to really do their job, but oh, I'm cool with this guy. Come on in, like
Yeah. Oh, me and Bob drink beer every day,
Yeah.
He's be my marketing person.
Exactly. So yeah, man, it's hiring good people is hard, man, but if you find it, sometimes you just got to pay more. It's like anything else in life. If you go for the cheap stuff, it's gonna break, and you're gonna have to, pay what you originally bought for the quality stuff in the first place. So,
Oh, like remember that gum commercial? I can't remember the name of the gum where like they offered this lady like 80,000. She said, "No, I want $100,000. We don't pay $100,000. You were for me because I'm special. Like, the unicorn pops out of nowhere, right? I'm special. If you want me, you got to pay me 100,000." Or the thing was, right?
Yeah, you gotta pay for quality. That's how I look at it.
So, do you think a lot of people lowball themselves when it comes to like negotiating salaries? Do you think they're like, man, I've been looking for a job for 6 months. I've had
Yeah.
10 interviews. They offer me
Oh,
like
yeah.
60,000. I know I'm worth 80.
Yeah, I know that for a fact. For your first job, though, I would even recommend taking that low ball offer just to get your foot in the door, and then you can always keep interviewing. But you don't want to sit around waiting 6 more months to try to find out. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that six. I always look at the first 2 years as sacrifices. You're going to be underpaid. But once you get those 2 years experience, that's when the doors really open and you can negotiate what you really want. But say for example, would I take a 45K job now versus 6 months later, 60K job? I'll take the 45K job now because I have 6 months of experience. That's gonna let me find that high paying opportunity sooner. You know what I mean? Because I'm getting that experience quicker.
Yeah. So, Kevin, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't asked you yet, or anything else you want to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
All right, I think we covered a lot of stuff, man. So I can't really think of anything off the top of my head.
So, real quick, back to your your LinkedIn posts, your social media posts and podcasts. I might have asked you this already, but what's your intent behind that? Just to build your personal brand, to help as many people that you want. Like, what's your what's your end game with that? If it turns out how you want to turn out.
I would say, I really like posting stuff that helps people out. I try to give both sides. I'm not always going to post like these motivational things. Oh, everything's good.
Yeah. That's not me either, right? I'm not your rah go team type of guy, right?
Like I hype you up, but I'm gonna tell you that it's not easy. So go get it, but you got to put that work in. Like I like telling people, giving people like more realistic assessment of what's out there. Like in terms of the end game. Hopefully it blows up, and I can keep on giving that advice. But hopefully I can also like take that money and start working on stuff I actually want to work on.
Yeah. And you might already talk about this too, but another thing you should be doing too, right? Like you talk about being entrepreneurial, start your own startup.
Yeah.
Suppose like a year from now, you start your own startup, right? Building some kind of game. From these engagements, you already have a pool of talent you can pull from to reach out to. Like, hey, I really like, Tom Brown. I really like Susan Jane. I really like how they did, Let me reach out to them and see if they want to come work with me, right? So I think that's something definitely you can pull from this too.
Exactly. Like, there's no real disadvantage from not increasing your attraction, your following. You have a broader people, a broader array of people that you can work with and pull talent from.
And people you've never met in real life, right? Like
Exactly.
never, like I got so many people following me, I'm talking to, engaging to, right?
Yeah.
I would never known anywhere, right? Just because my own podcast was me a post, just it's a whole new world, right?
And like a lot of people been kind of reaching out to me and say, hey man, that really helped me out. So that's a good feeling. Like, though you just think you're just talking about whatever, but for some reason that really resonates with them, and it
you definitely get a lot of engagements in your post. A lot of junior developers reaching out saying thank you, and something simple like I remember one a lady did a post like she can't find a job, whatever, and you reshared it, and this like a big time CTO from a big time tech company in California reached out to her like, hey, I really can't, I have no job for you, but hey, I want to be your mentor, right? Like man, this young lady got this guy to be her mentor. That's be literally worth millions of dollars her during her life, right? I mean, like this guy it was a big time, right? Like just because this one post, something simple, you were sharing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like seeing like, people who really want to be in the industry getting jobs. Like, if they're just here like, oh, I just want some money, whatever. But if they're like, man, this is really what I really want to do, it feels good for them to just be excited about getting that first opportunity.
So Kevin, let's say you're a team lead, whatever, you're in charge of developers.
Yeah.
What would a developer have to do or not do for you to say, hey, guy, like being a developer is not for you. We're gonna have to let you go.
I'm gonna say, if they keep making the same mistake over and over and over, it's like you're not listening. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes like you realize like, okay, this project is kind of beyond them. Like, everybody's not at the same level. So if I have to let them go, I'm not just gonna be like, oh yeah, you're fired. I kind of be like, like look around the company. Hey, is there another project where I can move this guy to? Because this project is a little more advanced. Or, like since I'm building up my network on LinkedIn, I'm kind of like I can reach out to other people. Like, hey, this guy, he's not really a suit for this company. Do y'all have a little more junior of a role that I can place him at? But like if he's not able to complete features because it's just beyond him, and sometimes that happens. But I think another thing is like bad attitude. Like nobody really wants to work around people who just have like a nasty attitude.
Yeah, that's the worst thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So your current job that you have, we call it your 9 to 5. Did you have to get permission from them to do a social media post, or is something you're doing separate from that? It's like two different things.
Oh yeah, I just do it, man.
Okay.
I know with like certain big companies like Google or stuff, something they don't really want you to have a
yeah.
because
because you never mention your company in any of your posts like that. You just keep it like, I guess it would be professional, I guess.
Yeah, I try to leave like company specific stuff out of it. So
that's good, because a lot of companies like you gotta get permission and stuff, which I don't know about that.
okay, yeah. And I know like for Google and Facebook and all of that, they'll kind of tell you no, probably like we don't want you doing social media.
Yeah. So what is so you live in the Dallas Fort Worth area.
Yeah.
What is like the tech startup scene there? Are you involved with that in the tech or startup scene there in any kind of way there? How is that there?
Yeah, I'm not too involved like locally. Most of the stuff I do is kind of online. I wouldn't even really know where to reach out to people like in the local tech startup scene. I think Austin is more like a tech startup bubbling area. That's more like the Bay Area of Texas.
Yeah.
I think DFW is more corporate.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah. So you're pretty happy with the job you have right now. Do you have any plans? Are you gonna like every 6 months look for a job and see what's out there for you, or what's your plan on that? What's your approach to that?
Recently I've been kind of like, I've been a ton of different recruiters on. I'm not really looking for a job, but now it's more so like if they present I just say, hey, I want like 180K. If they say okay, I'll say, I guess I'll do the interview.
They're like, okay, that's all you want. Come on,
Yeah. And I might be lowballing myself. It seems like you could I probably can say 200K.
I know in the Seattle area, it's like I think 200K is a starting point in Seattle if you're like a decent developer. But of course, I think of course you have Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Expedia. It's a pretty big tech hub up here.
Yeah, I know it's way more expensive over there too. So.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. Of course, $200,000 might be low ball, high wall, But one thing I would definitely say, if you're a developer, HR, market, whatever, definitely know your value. Like figure out the labor market, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm worth 80,000. Yeah, you're worth 80,000 like Dallas, Texas, but you probably work 125 in Seattle, 160 in San Francisco, right. Or you might be only worth 55 in I don't know, Temple, Texas, right? It's
exactly.
And the size of the company, right? You're gonna get paid more in Amazon than you're gonna get paid for like some company with 200 people in it, right?
Right.
Nonprofit.
And
definitely research your labor market, know what you're worth.
And that's kind of like why it's important to build up your visibility. Like they might be like, okay, he's in DFW. Normally I would only give him 180K, but since this guy is really bubbling and you know what he's talking about, we need to have him. So he can have 200. We'll pay him more than normal for that area just to get him.
Let's get some point. And another big thing, like in the Bay Area, I'll use Bay as an example. Like some companies, tech companies there, like, a lot of people are remote and they're like, okay, I'm paying Jason $120,000 a year.
Yeah.
I'm paying $120,000 a year because I know San Francisco is so expensive.
Yeah.
Jason moved back to Dallas. Dallas expensive. I'm gonna take him from 120 to 80,000, right?
Yeah.
And Jason was like, hey, what are you doing? I paid $120,000. And the company messed up. They didn't explain, hey, this extra money because you live in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
A lot of times I was saying, hey, I'll still pay $120,000. I don't care where you live at, right?
Exactly.
I think a lot of companies are getting that wrong. The messaging and optics have been wrong, right? Like they should have known ahead of time, hey, I'm paying Jason 120, but 80 is his salary, 40,000 because, hey, we don't live in a freaking cardboard box in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Because of COVID, you still go back home to Dallas. Hey, we can't afford 120,000. You live in Dallas, right? But some companies are like, are still paying the big money no matter where you live at. So
yeah,
it's an interesting concept, an interesting dynamic people are going through right now.
Yeah, I think because from the programming standpoint, it's like I'm still turning the same quality of code. Are you paying for where I live at, or are you paying for my contribution to the company?
Yeah, just like in the military, in the military, you might get paid $2,000 housing allowance to live in like the Seattle area, but only $900 live in Killeen, right?
Yeah.
And just like when I had this, my first post-army job was like with the Trident Seafoods. They paid me like a free housing, flights back and forth. It probably came like $20,000 a year, but like, hey, this $20,000, that's don't include in my compensation. That's for me to even come up here, right? But they saw it differently, right? So, yeah, I think a lot of tech companies messed that up. They messed up their message, I think.
Yeah. I think, like, if you can't dial people back if they move because they're gonna get mad and they probably leave.
I mean, that's a big pay cut from. Of course, make the numbers up and go from 120 to 80,000. It just says you move. Like first of all, I had to move because like COVID and stuff, or whatever, in case and maybe the company said, hey, if you move, we want to cut your pay. Maybe I think a lot of companies messed up and they tell the people until after they moved to another place, right? Hey, you move, you're gonna lose 40,000, like, and they probably plan to do something with the 40,000.
And I think when you first negotiate your salary, you got to pretty much 120. This is our default rate. We're adding 20,000 because you live in San Francisco. If you move from here, we're dialing that back. Tell them up front.
Yeah, a lot of people do not do that. Of course, who could have predicted COVID and all that stuff?
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly.
Hey, Kevin, can you share your social media for yourself to include your podcast and all that kind of stuff so people can reach out to you?
Oh man, yeah. With YouTube, they don't give you the dynamic URLs.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So after you get a certain amount, so it's just like a bunch of random characters. But let me look at my LinkedIn. I guess that'll be the easiest way for people to reach out to me. Let's see.
And what's the name of your podcast?
It's called Coder Conversations. My LinkedIn is linkedin.com/in/KEVM254.
All right. And so listen, we'll share his social media links and for his social media podcast on the show notes. You can find the show notes at www.kevinsaysowblaw.com. Be sure to share this episode with your networks and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the Jason Cavness Experience on your favorite podcast platform. So Kevin, we're coming to the end of our talk and you give us some great value and great advice. So last thing, can you give us a quick snippet on any advice, any wisdom you want to talk about? Yeah,
I would say just stay persistent. Don't quit. There's a lot of challenges, but if you stick with it, keep analyzing, keep adjusting, eventually you're going to get where you need to go. The race goes to those who endure.
Kevin, thank you for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. I appreciate you inviting me on, man. It was a good conversation.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. And remember to be great every day.